Close your eyes now and let the heaviness of the day begin to dissolve. Imagine for a moment that you're standing at the edge of a vast, tranquil ocean, but you are perfectly safe, wrapped in a blanket of warm velvet darkness. The air here is cool and clean, carrying the faint, salty perfume of the sea, a scent that reminds you of deep, ancient breaths. You are far away from the noise of the world, far away from the demands of time. Here, there is only the rhythmic sound of water meeting the shore, a slow, steady pulse that matches the beating of your own heart. Inhale slowly, drawing in this peaceful atmosphere, and as you exhale, feel your shoulders drop. Feel the tension melting from your jaw, your hands, your legs, sinking deeper into the surface beneath you. We are about to embark on a journey of light and stone, a drifting exploration of the sentinels that have watched over humanity's edges for millennia. We will float through history and across oceans, observing the quiet majesty of lighthouses. But this is not a lesson to be memorized. It is a landscape to be experienced. Let the words wash over you like a gentle tide. If your mind wanders, let it wander like a gull on a breeze, and simply return to the sound of my voice when you are ready. You're entering a state of lucid dreaming, where the imagery is vivid but the body is entirely at rest. There is nothing you need to do, nowhere you need to be. You're safe in the harbour of the present moment. Let the darkness comfort you. Let the silence embrace you. And let us drift toward the first glimmer of light on the horizon. Cast your mind back through the mists of time, drifting thousands of years into the past, to the ancient harbour of Alexandria in Egypt. Picture a structure so immense it was whispered about in every port of the known world, a marvel that rose from the island of Pharos. It does not look like the lighthouses you might know from postcards. It is a colossal fortress of stone, rising over 300 feet into the pale blue sky. Imagine standing at its base, feeling the rough sun-baked limestone beneath your fingertips, feeling the heat of the Mediterranean sun radiating from the massive blocks. This was the prototype, the ancestor of every beacon that would follow. At the very summit of this architectural mountain, there was no electric bulb, no glass lens. Instead, visualize a massive roaring fire, a bonfire that was kept burning every night, fed by slow-burning wood and resin. Behind this fire stood a great mirror, likely made of polished bronze or brass, burnished to such a high sheen that it reflected the dancing flames miles out into the dark sea. Imagine the smoke drifting up to mingle with the stars, a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. It was said that this light could be seen for 30 miles, a warm, flickering star created by human hands to say, "Here is safety." Feel the awe of the ancient mariners seeing that faint orange glow after weeks of nothing but black water, a signal that civilization and rest were near. The Pharos was not just a tower, it was a promise, etched in stone and fire, proving that even in the ancient world we sought to guide one another home. Drifting forward from the ancient sands, we float across the centuries and the seas to the windswept coast of Galicia in Spain. Here stands a testament to endurance, the Tower of Hercules. Unlike the lost wonder of Alexandria, this sentinel still stands, the oldest existing lighthouse in the world that is still in use. Picture a sturdy square tower, Roman in origin, rising from a rocky headland where the Atlantic Ocean crashes with eternal power. It has watched the rise and fall of empires, the passing of wooden galleons, ironclads, and modern supertankers. Visualize the stone of this tower. It is weathered, grey, and gold, textured by 2,000 years of salt spray and rain. If you could press your hand against its walls, you would feel the cold solidity of history. It was built by the Romans, who dedicated it to Mars, the god of war, yet its purpose has always been one of preservation. Think of the millions of nights this tower has seen. Nights of terrifying storms where the wind howled like a living thing, and nights of absolute stillness where the moon reflected perfectly on the black water. It has been renovated, covered in an 18th century facade, but the core remains, ancient Roman rock, holding firm against the erosion of time. It reminds us that some things are built to last, that there are foundations in our world, and perhaps within yourself, that are unshakable, no matter how much the waves crash against them. From the rugged exterior of stone, let us move our imagination inward, into the delicate crystalline heart of the lighthouse, the lens, specifically the invention known as the Fresnel lens. Before this masterpiece of glass was created, lighthouses lost nearly all their light, the rays scattering uselessly into the sky or the ground. But imagine a man named Augustin Fresnel who dreamed of capturing light. Visualize this lens not as a simple piece of glass, but as a giant, beautiful jewel, sometimes taller than a person. It looks like a transparent beehive, composed of hundreds of concentric rings of glass prisms. Picture yourself standing inside the lantern room, the glass of the lens surrounding you. It is a masterpiece of optics. The prisms take the chaotic light from the central lamp and bend it, focusing it into a single, powerful horizontal beam. It is quiet here, save for the hum of the light. The glass is heavy, yet it looks like frozen water. When the light hits these prisms, it glows with a fierce intensity, turning a small flame into a piercing sabre of luminance that can cut through miles of dense fog. It is often called the invention that saved a million ships. It represents clarity and focus. Just as the lens gathers scattered light and gives it direction, imagine your own scattered thoughts being gently gathered, focused, and sent out as a clear, calm beam of awareness. The beauty of the Fresnel lens is in its ability to take something small and fragile, a single flame, and magnify it until it becomes a guiding star for the world. As we step back from the mesmerizing glow of the lens, we float outside again to look at the tower in the light of day. Have you ever noticed that lighthouses are rarely just grey stone? They are painted in striking, bold patterns. This is known as the day mark. While the light guides ships by night, the day mark guides them when the sun is up. Imagine a coastline shrouded in a morning mist, the colours of the land muted to greys and greens. In this monochrome world, a lighthouse must stand out. Visualize a tall tower painted with a bright red stripe spiralling up its white column like a barber's pole, or perhaps distinct horizontal bands of black and white. These designs are not for decoration, they are a visual language. A sailor looking through a telescope needs to know exactly which lighthouse they are looking at to determine their location. One tower might be solid white to contrast against dark cliffs behind it. Another might be red to stand out against a white sandy shore. Picture the textures of the paint, thick and glossy, protecting the brick and iron beneath. There is something deeply comforting about this deliberateness, that every stripe, every colour choice, was made to ensure visibility. It is a reminder that we all have our own unique markings, our own ways of being seen, and that being distinct is a form of safety, a way of saying, I am here, and I am exactly who I am supposed to be. As the sun sets in our imagination, and the day mark fades into silhouette, the light begins to pulse. This brings us to the concept of the character of light. Just as the day mark identifies the tower by day, the rhythm of the flash identifies it by night. If every lighthouse simply shone a steady beam, a sailor might mistake it for a bright star, or the lights of a distant town. So each lighthouse is given a heartbeat, a unique signature of time. Close your eyes and try to visualize this rhythm. One lighthouse might flash once every 5 seconds. Flash, darkness, 2, 3, 4, 5, flash. Another might have a group flashing pattern, 2 quick bursts of light followed by a long pause. Flash, flash, silence. This is the language of the coast. A mariner in the pitch black of a storm doesn't need to see the tower, they only need to count the seconds. It is a slow, hypnotic cadence, a communication that transcends words. Imagine you are on the deck of a ship, gently rocking. You see a light sweep across the horizon. You count the interval. In that counting there is certainty. You know exactly where you are. The repetition is soothing, predictable, and reliable. It is the pulse of safety in the chaos of the night, a rhythmic reminder that someone is keeping watch, measuring time in bursts of brilliance. Who keeps this watch? Let us drift into the life of the lighthouse keeper. Before automation, this was a life of profound solitude and routine. Picture a small circular room at the base of the tower, fitted with a curved wooden desk and a potbelly stove glowing with warmth. The wind might be screaming outside, battering the walls with rain and foam, but inside there is a quiet, disciplined order. The keeper's life was defined by the maintenance of the light. Visualize the keeper climbing the spiral stairs, winding up and up, the sound of their boots echoing on the iron steps. They carry a heavy can of oil. Their hands are rough but gentle as they polish the brass fittings until they gleam like gold. They trim the wicks with surgical precision, for a smoking wick would soot the lens and dim the light. There is a meditative quality to this existence. It is a life stripped of distraction. The keeper lives in a world of circles. The round tower, the round lens, the circular horizon of the sea. There is a beauty in this isolation, a peace found in the dedication to a single, vital purpose. Imagine the feeling of being the only waking soul for miles, the guardian of the flame, finding comfort in the silence and the duty, knowing that your wakefulness allows others to sleep in safety. Sometimes, the land does not reach far enough into the sea, and so we must build where nature never intended. Consider the engineering marvel of lighthouses built on submerged reefs, like the famous Bell Rock or the Eddystone. Picture a jagged reef that is completely covered by water at high tide, a hidden trap for ships. How does one build a stone tower on a rock that disappears twice a day? Visualize the masons of the past, working only during the few hours of low tide. They stand knee-deep in cold water, chiseling into the hard rock. They had to invent a way to make the stone part of the reef itself. Imagine the stones of the tower's base cut in a dovetail shape, interlocking with each other like the pieces of a complex wooden puzzle, so that no wave could pull them apart. They are not just stacked, they are woven together. As the tower rises from the waves, it tapers, curved like the trunk of an oak tree. This is not an accident. The curve allows the massive energy of the waves to wash up the side of the tower and dissipate, rather than smashing against a flat wall. Visualize the white spray of a storm wave shooting up the curved side of the lighthouse, wrapping it in foam, yet the structure does not shudder. It stands because it understands the water. It yields to the shape of the wave to survive it. It is a lesson in resilience, adapting your form to the forces around you, rooting yourself deep and letting the storm wash over you without moving you. We often think of lighthouses as tall, but have you considered why? It is a matter of geometry and the curvature of the earth. We live on a sphere, and because of this curve, the horizon hides things from us. If you stand on the beach, the horizon is only about 3 miles away. To signal a ship 20 miles out, the light must be lifted high into the air to peek over the curve of the planet. Imagine floating up the side of a tall lighthouse, rising higher and higher. As you ascend, the horizon line pushes back, revealing more of the ocean's surface. From the lantern room of a tall tower, the world seems vast and endless. The height is a necessity of reach. The taller the tower, the earlier the warning. It is a beautiful relationship between height and safety. Imagine the beam of light leaving the lantern room, travelling in a straight line, skimming tangent to the curved surface of the dark ocean, touching the eye of a sailor far below the horizon. It connects 2 points that are hidden from each other by the earth itself. It is a bridge of light over the curve of the world. Feel the vertigo of the height, not as fear, but as a soaring perspective, seeing further than anyone else, looking out over the edge of the world. But light cannot penetrate everything. There are times when the fog rolls in so thick and heavy that it swallows the beam, turning the world into a wall of grey cotton. When the light fails, the lighthouse must speak. This brings us to the foghorn. It is the voice of the tower. Imagine a sound so deep and low that you feel it vibrating in your chest more than you hear it with your ears. A low, mournful, resonant bellow. Bow! The sound needs to be low frequency because low notes travel further through the dense moisture of the fog. High notes are scattered and lost, but the low notes push through. Picture the heavy, damp air, the visibility reduced to nothing. The world has become small, enclosed in mist, and then that sound cuts through the silence, a rhythmic warning. It is a sound that has often been called lonely, but to a sailor, it is the most comforting sound imaginable. It says, "I am still here. Do not come closer." There is a heaviness to the foghorn, a sonic weight that anchors the listener. Imagine lying in a warm bed near the coast, hearing that distant, muffled boom at regular intervals. It is a lullaby of the coast, a deep, steady breathing that confirms the vigilance of the lighthouse even when it cannot be seen. Finally, let us drift to the edge of the plausible, to a place called Bishop Rock in the Isles of Scilly. Imagine the smallest possible island, really just a sharp pinnacle of rock jutting out of the wild Atlantic. It is so small that there is barely room for the base of the lighthouse. There is no garden, no path, no land to walk on. There is only the tower and the sea. Visualize the construction of this outpost. It is the westernmost point of England, the first thing visible after crossing the entire Atlantic Ocean. The waves here maintain a fury gathered over 3,000 miles of open water. The lighthouse here rises straight out of the ocean like a stone finger pointing to the sky. It is a place of extreme isolation. To live here was to live inside a ship made of stone that never moved, yet was constantly under siege. Imagine the view from the gallery. 360 degrees of churning, restless water. There is no shoreline, only the drop into the deep. Yet this tower stands. It is reinforced with iron and granite, a masterpiece of stubbornness. It represents the ultimate boundary, the last inch of solid ground before the infinite blue. It asks you to imagine a place of absolute focus, where all that exists is the strength of the tower and the vastness of the sea, a singular point of light in an endless expanse of dark water. From that singular point of defiance at Bishop Rock, where stone battles the eternal crash of the Atlantic, let your mind drift now to calmer, shallower waters, where the seabed is not made of granite, but of shifting, soft sands. Here, the ocean floor is a vast desert of silt and mud, a place where no stone tower could ever find a foothold. It would simply sink, swallowed by the earth. To conquer this, engineers look to nature, specifically the delicate, poised stance of the water spider, to create the screw pile lighthouse. Visualize a structure that does not block the waves, but rather stands above them on long, slender iron legs. These legs are not merely resting on the bottom, they are tipped with wide steel screws, twisted deep into the sandy floor like roots, anchoring the structure against the tides. Picture yourself in a cottage hovering 20 feet above the gentle swells of the Chesapeake Bay or the Floridian coast. Because the waves pass freely between the open legs, there is no crashing impact, only the soft lapping of water beneath the floorboards. It is a sensation of suspension, of living in a house on stilts in the middle of a turquoise expanse. The lighthouse here is often hexagonal, a cosy wooden dwelling painted white with a red roof, looking more like a misplaced cottage than a fortress. It suggests a different kind of strength, not the strength of resistance, but the strength of letting things pass through, of rising above the turbulence on quiet, spindly legs, watching the water flow endlessly beneath your feet without ever being dragged away by it. Yet, there are places in the deep ocean where the floor is too far down, where neither stone nor iron legs can reach. Here, where the water is dark and bottomless, humanity placed the lightship. Imagine a vessel painted a brilliant fire engine red, anchored alone in the middle of a grey seascape. It is a ship that never sails, a boat destined to stay forever in one place. Feel the gentle, rhythmic rocking of this vessel. It is a different lullaby than the solid stillness of the stone tower. Here, the floor beneath you is always in motion, rising and falling with the breathing of the sea. The lightship is a floating sentinel, equipped with a tall mast crowned with a powerful beacon. On the hull, in giant white letters, is the name of the station, Nantucket, or Ambrose, a written promise of location in the void. Life aboard was a test of patience, a monastic existence on the waves. Visualize the thick, heavy anchor chains diving down into the black depths, holding the ship against the currents. The lightship reminds us that sometimes, to be a guide, one must yield to the motion of the world, flowing with the swells, dipping and rising, yet remaining tethered to your core purpose, a bright red buoy of safety in a shifting world. Let us float from the swaying deck of the lightship and move inward again, returning to the lantern room of a great stone tower to examine the miracle of how the light turns. For over a century, the massive glass lenses weighing several tons needed to rotate smoothly to create the flashing character of the light. But gears grind and wheels create friction. The solution was the mercury bath. Picture a heavy iron trough, a circular ring filled with gallons of liquid mercury, quicksilver. This metal is heavy, dense, and silvery smooth. The entire multi-ton apparatus of the lens floats on this pool of liquid metal. It is a feat of physics that feels like magic. Because it is floating, the friction is almost non-existent. Imagine pushing a structure the weight of 2 elephants with just the pressure of your little finger and watching it spin silently. There is no grinding sound, no vibration, just a heavy glass jewel rotating in perfect silence on a bed of silver fluid. It captures the essence of effortless movement. It teaches us that heavy burdens can be made light if they are supported by the right medium, allowing them to spin freely, casting their beams without struggle, turning round and round in a perpetual silent dance. As the lens spins on its bath of mercury, consider the fuel that once fed the flame at its centre. Before electricity, the light was alive, a fire that needed to be fed. For a long time, the preferred fuel was oil from the sperm whale. It burned bright and clean, without the thick smoke that would cloud the glass. But as time moved on, the keepers turned to colza oil, pressed from the seeds of wild cabbage, and later to paraffin. Invoke the sensory experience of the keeper's nightly ritual. The air in the lantern room is warm and carries the distinct heavy scent of oil, an earthy, viscous smell that signifies warmth. Watch the golden liquid being poured from a copper jug, thick and slow like honey, filling the reservoir of the lamp. The wick is trimmed, a fresh white cotton strip waiting for the spark. When lit, the flame is not a harsh white glare, but a warm yellow-white incandescence. It is a living light, requiring oxygen and care. The keeper must pump the oil up to the wick, a rhythmic mechanical heartbeat, click-clack, ensuring the flame never starves. This was a relationship of nurturing. The light was not a switch to be flipped. It was a hungry entity that needed sustenance. It reminds us of the slow, deliberate inputs required to maintain our own inner fire, the viscous, golden fuel of rest and nourishment that keeps the flame steady through the long night. This flame, magnified by the lens, usually appears white to the sailor. But navigate your mind now to the concept of sector lights. Not all waters are safe, and sometimes a single beam must tell a complex story. Engineers placed panels of coloured glass, ruby red and emerald green, over specific sections of the lantern windows. Imagine you're a captain steering a ship in the dark. Ahead, you see a pure, white light. This is the safety sector, a narrow corridor of safe water between hidden rocks. As long as the light is white, you are on the path. But if you drift too far to port, the light suddenly changes to a deep, warning red. If you drift to starboard, it turns a vivid green. You're sailing down a highway made of light beams. These colours are rich and gem-like. The red is the colour of a glowing ember. The green is the colour of deep sea glass. It is a silent communication, a way for the lighthouse to say, adjust your course. It creates a geometry of safety upon the black chaos of the waves. There is comfort in these boundaries, in knowing that there are visible edges to the path, and that a simple shift in colour can guide you back to the centre, back to the white, clear road of safety. While many lighthouses were purely functional towers, there is one that stands as a palace upon the waves, the Cordouan Lighthouse in France. Known as the Versailles of the sea, it challenges the idea that a beacon must be austere. Drift back to the Renaissance, to the year 1611, and visualize a tower rising from a rocky plateau that is completely submerged at high tide. But this is not just a tower, it is a royal residence. Picture walking through the heavy oak doors into a circular hall paved with black and white marble tiles. The walls are not bare stone, but decorated with carved pillars and statues of kings. As you ascend the wide, spiral staircase, you pass not into a simple bunk room, but into the king's apartment, with fireplaces and intricate woodwork. Higher still, there is a chapel with a vaulted ceiling and stained glass windows, where the light of the sun filters through in pools of blue and gold. This lighthouse was built to show that art and beauty can exist in the most hostile of environments. It stands as a testament to the human desire to decorate the darkness, to bring elegance to the edge of the abyss. Imagine the sound of a choir singing in that stone chapel, the melody mixing with the roar of the ocean outside, a harmonization of the sacred and the wild. Stepping out from the marble halls of Cordouan, let us travel to the humble, wind-battered exterior of a remote island station to visit the lighthouse garden. Despite the salt spray that burns leaves and the gales that uproot saplings, keepers often yearned for the softness of green things. They built high stone walls to create sheltered pockets of calm, little courtyards protected from the fury of the wind. Visualize a small patch of earth, carried bag by bag from the mainland, spread over the rock. In this precious soil, the keeper grows hearty vegetables, potatoes, cabbages, and perhaps for the soul, a few marigolds or hardy geraniums. The contrast is striking. The delicate, velvety petals of a flower trembling against the backdrop of unlimited grey granite and white foam. These gardens were acts of defiance and hope. To tend a garden on a rock is to insist on life where there should be none. Smell the damp earth, distinct from the smell of seaweed and salt. It is the scent of home. When the fog rolls in, the keeper can step into this walled sanctuary and touch the leaves, a tactile connection to the living earth, a grounding reminder of growth and cycles amidst the static permanence of the stone tower. Into these gardens, and towards the brilliant beam of the tower, come the travellers of the air. This brings us to the phenomenon of bird migration and the moth effect. Lighthouses are often placed on headlands that serve as navigational waypoints, not just for ships, but for millions of migrating birds. In the profound darkness of a cloudy night, the birds are drawn to the brilliant beam like moths to a porch light. Imagine standing on the gallery railing at night during the migration season. The air around you is filled with the soft flutter of wings. Thousands of starlings, thrushes and warblers swirl in the beam, their feathers illuminated in silver and white flashes against the black sky. It is a river of life flowing through the light. Sometimes they land on the railing, exhausted from their journey across the sea, tiny, heaving chests resting for a moment on the iron bars. The lighthouse becomes a resting post, a star that has descended to earth to guide them. It is a gentle, chaotic ballet of flight. The keeper, often a solitary figure, finds company in these passing flocks, witnessing the great unseen movements of nature. It is a scene of soft collisions, where the technology of man meets the instinct of the wild, both navigating the same dark void. Who are the architects of these stone pillars that attract both ships and birds? We must honour the lighthouse dynasties, specifically the Stevenson family of Scotland. For generations, this single family, the ancestors of the writer Robert Louis Stevenson, battled the ocean to build the impossible. They did not just stack stones, they sculpted them. Visualize the shape of a Stevenson lighthouse, like the mighty Skerryvore. It is not a straight cylinder, it has a hyperbolic curve sweeping inward from a wide base and tapering gracefully as it rises. This curve is pleasing to the eye, mimicking the trunk of a great tree, but it is mathematically precise. It tricks the waves. When a wall of water strikes the tower, the curve directs the water upward, robbing it of its smashing power, turning a hammer blow into a vertical spray. Picture the masons cutting granite blocks with such precision that they fit together within a fraction of an inch, without mortar, locked by their own weight and shape. To look at a Stevenson tower is to look at a marriage of art and granite, a structure that looks as though it grew from the reef organically. It speaks of a generational patience, fathers teaching sons how to listen to the sea and build something that respects its power while defying its destruction. Finally, as we stand on the gallery of that curved tower looking west, we wait for a moment of rare atmospheric magic. The green flash. It is evening. The sun is sinking into the ocean, a blazing orange disk flattening as it touches the horizon. The sky's painting itself in gradients of violet, indigo, and fire. You're watching closely, your breath held in the cool evening air, just as the very last sliver of the sun disappears below the waterline. For a fraction of a second, the light refracts through the atmosphere in a specific way. A sudden, brilliant pulse of emerald green sparkles on the horizon. It is gone as quickly as it appears, a blink of the universe. It is a reward for the patient observer. The Japanese call it a symbol of good luck. Others say it is a glimpse of the soul. In the context of the lighthouse, it is the ocean's own beacon, a flash of colour that marks the transition from day to night. It signals the beginning of the watch. As the green fades into the deepening twilight, the lighthouse beam above you clicks on, taking over the duty of the sun, sweeping its white arm across the darkening waters, ready to stand guard through the velvet hours of the night. As the green flash dissolves into the deepening indigo of the twilight sky, our eyes remain fixed on the horizon, where the boundary between sea and air begins to blur. In this trick of light and temperature, we encounter the phenomenon known as the Fata Morgana. It is a mirage of the high seas, born from layers of cold air sitting heavy on the water beneath warmer air above. Imagine standing on the lighthouse gallery, looking out at a distant ship. Through the lens of this atmospheric magic, the ship does not sit on the water. Instead, it appears to be floating in the sky, hovering amongst the clouds. Sometimes the image is inverted, a ghost ship sailing upside down in the ether. The lighthouse itself, seen from a distance, might appear to stretch and distort, becoming a towering castle that reaches impossibly high, or a flat plateau hovering above the waves. These illusions are silent, shifting dreams of the atmosphere, bending the light before it ever reaches your eye. It is a reminder that the ocean is a place of fluidity, not just of water, but of reality itself. To watch a Fata Morgana is to watch the world unmoor itself, to see the impossible painted in soft, hazy strokes on the canvas of the horizon, leaving you to wonder where the sea ends and the sky begins. From the bending of light in the open air, let us move back inside to the manipulation of light through glass. We have spoken of the Fresnel lens, but there is a king among them, the hyper-radiant lens. These were the largest lenses ever constructed, rare titans of optics built for the most critical headlands where the beam needed to reach the very edge of the Earth's curve. Visualize a structure of glass that is not merely an object, but a room. A hyper-radiant lens stands 12 feet tall and weighs several tons. It is so large that you can walk inside it comfortably, completely encased in a sparkling chrysalis of crystal. Imagine standing there, in the heart of the jewel. The glass prisms are thick, heavy slabs, yet they possess a terrifying clarity. When the sun hits them by day, they fracture the light into 1,000 rainbows that dance on the lantern room floor. By night, with the lamp lit, the intensity is overwhelming. You're inside the diamond. The world outside disappears, leaving only the pure, blinding geometry of the glass. It is a sanctuary of brilliance, a place where human engineering reached a scale of grandeur that feels almost spiritual. A cathedral built not for prayer, but for the worship of light itself. To make such a massive jewel turn, to make it sweep the horizon with its rhythmic flash, required a power source that predated electricity. This brings us to the clockwork mechanism. Before motors, lighthouses were driven by gravity, essentially functioning as giant grandfather clocks. Picture a hollow tube running down the centre of the stone tower, a dark vertical shaft. Inside this shaft hangs a massive iron weight, suspended by a steel cable. In the morning, the keeper would attach a hand crank to a winch in the lantern room. Close your eyes and listen to the sound. Click, click, click. The heavy, ratchet sound of the winding. It would take considerable strength to wind the weight all the way to the top of the tower. Once released, the weight would slowly, imperceptibly descend down the shaft, pulling the gears that turned the massive lens above. The descent might take 2 or 3 hours, requiring the keeper to wind it again and again throughout the night. It was a rhythm of physical labour and mechanical precision. The lighthouse was not static. It was a ticking machine, its heartbeat regulated by the slow, heavy pull of the earth itself, syncing the rotation of the light with the fundamental force of gravity. During the long hours between windings, when the storm raged outside or the calm sea lay silent, the keeper needed to occupy the mind. In the isolation of the tower, words became precious. This led to the creation of the Lighthouse Library. The Trinity House, the authority for lighthouses in Britain, created a system of travelling book boxes. Visualise a sturdy wooden crate, the corners reinforced with brass to withstand being hauled up from a boat on a rope. Inside, nestled in compartments, are 20 or 30 books. They smell of old paper, pipe tobacco, and the salt air that has permeated their bindings. These boxes travelled from lighthouse to lighthouse, rotating every few months. A keeper at a remote rock station might open the box to find novels by Dickens, treatises on astronomy, or bound volumes of magazines. Imagine the tactile comfort of turning a page while the wind howls against the thick glass. These books were shared consciousness, passed from one solitary soul to another. A marginal note scribbled by a keeper in Scotland might be read months later by a keeper in Cornwall. It was a slow, silent conversation, a web of stories woven between the lighthouses, connecting these lonely outposts through the shared imagination of the written word. But books cannot offer warmth or a greeting when you enter a room. For that, many keepers turn to a different kind of companion, the lighthouse cat. In a world of hard stone, cold iron and wet glass, the presence of a soft, living creature was a vital tether to the domestic world. Picture a small, nimble cat navigating the spiral stairs. They were often working members of the crew, keeping the tower free of mice that might chew the logbooks or the wick stores. But their true purpose was comfort. Imagine sitting in the galley kitchen, the curved walls holding in the heat of the coal stove. On the rug lies the cat, curled into a perfect circle of fur, purring, a deep, vibrating rumble that competes with the sound of the surf. When the keeper returns from a freezing watch on the gallery, the cat is there to weave between their legs, a warm, tactile greeting. There is something profoundly soothing about a cat sleeping undisturbedly in the midst of a gale. It signals safety. If the animal is calm, the tower is safe. It is a small pulse of life and warmth in a vertical silo of rock, a reminder that softness can survive even in the harshest of elements. While the cat might sleep through the storm, the keeper needed to know when the storm was coming. Long before satellite forecasts, they relied on a mysterious instrument called the storm glass. This was a sealed glass tube filled with a chemical mixture of camphor, alcohol and crystals, an invention often attributed to the captain of the HMS Beagle. Visualize this tube mounted on the wall near the barometer. The liquid inside changes its appearance based on the atmospheric conditions in ways we still don't fully understand. On a clear summer day, the liquid is transparent, like pure water. But as a storm approaches, the liquid becomes cloudy. Imagine peering closely at the glass. White crystals begin to form, growing like fern leaves or snowflakes, spiraling up through the liquid. If the crystals gather at the top, a gale is coming. If they form small stars, it will snow. It is a piece of chemical art, a small, contained winter storm in a bottle. The keeper would check it like an oracle, reading the white, feathery script of the chemicals to know what the sky intended. It connects the interior of the lighthouse to the invisible pressures of the atmosphere, a silent, crystalline forecast of the turbulence to come. Speaking of crystals and snow, let us drift to the freshwater oceans of the world, the Great Lakes of North America, to witness the phenomenon of the ice lighthouse. In late autumn and winter, the gales here are fierce, and the temperature drops well below freezing. The waves that crash against the pier lights don't just wash away, they freeze instantly upon contact. Imagine a lighthouse, normally red or white, beginning to accumulate layers of ice. Wave after wave sprays the tower, and layer after layer of white glaze builds up. Soon, the lighthouse loses its architectural shape. It becomes a biomorphic sculpture, a giant white frozen phantom rising from the grey water. The railings become thick walls of ice. The door is sealed shut behind a foot of frost. The lantern room peeks out like a single eye from a hooded cloak of white. The silence here is profound, ice-dampened sound. The roar of the water is muffled by the thick casing. To walk down the pier toward this structure is to walk into an alien landscape, a place of extreme, suspended beauty. It is the lighthouse in hibernation, wrapped in a winter coat woven by the wind and the water itself, standing stoic and white against the leaden sky. Beneath the ice and the grey surface of the ocean, there is another kind of light, one that mirrors the beacon above. This is the phenomenon of phosphorescence or bioluminescence. On certain nights, when the water is warm and filled with microscopic life, the ocean decides to glow. Stand on the gallery in the pitch black of a moonless night and look down, not at the horizon, but directly into the water crashing at the base of the tower. Every wave that breaks explodes not in white foam, but in a neon blue-green luminescence. It is as if the water is charged with electricity. The wake of a passing seal or a school of fish leaves a glowing trail like a comet. This milky sea creates a surreal symmetry, the rhythmic white flash of the lighthouse beams sweeping the sky, and the chaotic green-glowing crash of the waves below. It is a conversation between two lights, one engineered by man to guide, and one generated by nature to dazzle. It feels as though the stars have fallen out of the sky and dissolved into the ocean, turning the dark water into a living galaxy of cold fire. There are times, however, when the water is not beautiful, but perilous, and a ship is driven onto the rocks despite the warnings. In these moments, the lighthouse keepers became rescuers, using a device known as the breech's buoy. When the seas were too rough to launch a boat, this was the lifeline between the wreck and the shore. Visualize a rope fired from a cannon or rocket, flying across the gap between the lighthouse, or the shore, and the stranded ship. Once the line is pulled taut, a peculiar seat is sent out along the rope. It looks like a life ring with a pair of canvas heavy-duty shorts sewn into it, the breeches. One by one, the sailors climb into the canvas legs and are hauled across the churning abyss, suspended high above the crashing waves. Imagine the sensation of hanging in that harness, sliding along the cable. Below you is death. The white foam snaps at your feet, but the rope holds. You are pulled by the steady rhythmic heaving of the keeper's arms. It is a literal connection of safety, a thread of hemp and hope strung across the danger. The breech's buoy represents the ultimate extension of the lighthouse's purpose, not just to warn, but to reach out and physically pull the lost back to the solid ground. When the rescue is done and the storm has passed, the sky clears, revealing the oldest navigational aids of all, the stars. Lighthouse keepers were often amateur astronomers. Living far from the light pollution of cities, their view of the cosmos was unparalleled. Imagine the lantern room with the lamp extinguished for cleaning during the day, but at night picture the keeper stepping out onto the narrow balcony. The Milky Way stretches overhead like a band of spilled diamond dust, so bright it casts a faint shadow. The keeper knows the constellations as well as the coastline. They watch the slow rotation of the Great Bear, the steady rise of Orion. There is a profound synchronization here. The lighthouse lens rotates on its Mercury bath, a terrestrial clock. Above, the celestial sphere rotates on the axis of the Earth, a cosmic clock. Standing between them, the keeper is suspended between two infinities, the infinite dark of the ocean below and the infinite dark of the space above. Both are navigated by light. It offers a sense of perspective that dissolves the ego, leaving only a feeling of peace and place within the vast, silent turning of the universe. From that celestial gallery, where the keeper stands suspended between the ocean and the cosmos, let us turn our gaze from the distant stars to the nearest star of all, the sun. While the lighthouse is the queen of the night, communication was often needed during the blazing hours of the day. Before radio, keepers used a device of elegant simplicity to speak across the waves, the heliograph. Visualize a small circular mirror mounted on a tripod, polished to a perfect silvery sheen. The keeper stands on the gallery railing, the sun high and bright above. By tilting the mirror with precise calculated movements, they catch the sun's rays and redirect them towards a ship on the horizon, or a station on the mainland. It is a game of angles, trapping a piece of the sun and throwing it across the miles. Picture the flash, a blinding white spark of pure sunlight. Short flash, long flash, dots and dashes. It is the Morse code written in solar fire. The beam is silent, travelling at the speed of a light, cutting through the blue haze of the afternoon. To the recipient on the distant deck, it looks as though a star has awakened on the lighthouse balcony, blinking rapidly. This act of talking with mirrors is a reminder of our ability to harness the raw power of nature, the very light of our solar system, to whisper messages of safety and news across the silence of the sea. The news carried by these flashes often heralded the arrival of the most anticipated visitor in a keeper's life, the lighthouse tender. This was the supply ship, the lifeline that connected the isolated rock to the rest of civilization. Imagine the feeling of standing on the gallery after weeks of solitude, watching a smudge of smoke appear on the horizon, slowly resolving into the shape of a sturdy vessel. The tender brought everything. It brought barrels of oil for the light, sacks of coal for the stove, and fresh water. But more importantly, it brought the tangible textures of the human world. Visualize the crane on the ship's deck swinging a net filled with crates towards the rock. The air, usually smelling only of salt and ozone, is suddenly filled with new scents. The citrus tang of fresh oranges, the earthy smell of potatoes still covered in mainland soil, and the sharp, dusty scent of newspapers and letters. The arrival of the mail was a sacred moment. Words from family, news of wars or weddings, arrived in bundles tied with string. For a few hours the rock buzzed with voices, the clatter of boots, the exchange of handshakes, and then, as the ship pulled away, leaving a white wake in the blue water, the keeper was left again with a replenished store, not just of food, but of memories and connection, enough to last through the next long stretch of silence. With the supplies safely stowage, let us retreat from the wind into the heart of the tower, to the domestic sanctuary of the keeper, the kitchen. In a structure designed for utility, the kitchen was the circle of warmth. Because the tower is round, the room is round. The walls curve gently around you, embracing you. Center your visualization on the cast iron stove, black and solid, radiating a fierce, dry heat. This was the hearth of the lighthouse. On top of it sits a heavy kettle, always simmering, the steam rising to fog the small, thick window panes. Smell the aroma of baking bread. Keepers were often excellent bakers, as bread could not be delivered fresh. Imagine the tactile pleasure of kneading dough on a curved wooden table, the flour dusting the air like snow. The rhythm of the kneading matches the rhythm of the waves outside. There is a profound coziness here, a concept the Danish call hygge. Outside, a winter gale might be screaming. throwing freezing spray against the glass, but inside the fire crackles, the kettle whistles, and the smell of yeast and toasted crust fills the air. It is a fortress of comfort, a small glowing ember of domestic life kept burning in the middle of a wild, indifferent ocean. To leave the kitchen and ascend to the lantern room, one must navigate the spine of the lighthouse, the spiral staircase. This is not merely a way up, it is a masterpiece of vertical geometry. In many wave-swept towers, the stairs are not made of solid stone, but of cast-iron openwork, intricate and lace-like, to save weight and allow light to filter down. Picture yourself standing at the bottom, looking up. The stairs wind upwards in a perfect helix, a nautilus shell made of iron, disappearing into the shadows above. As you begin to climb, feel the cold, smooth metal of the handrail sliding under your palm. The sound of your footsteps is distinct, a rhythmic metallic ringing that echoes up the shaft. Clang, clang, clang. There might be 100, 200 steps. As you circle higher, your perspective constantly shifts, turning round and round, a slow pirouette of ascent. Through the central void of the spiral, you can look all the way down to the floor far below, a dizzying drop that reminds you of the height you are gaining. It is a journey of repetition and patience, a daily pilgrimage from the living quarters to the light, winding your way upward through the core of the stone needle. At the top of the stairs, beneath the great lens, we find the machinery that gives the light its voice. We have spoken of flashing lights, but there is another kind of character, equally hypnotic, the occulting light. In a flashing light, the lens spins. In an occulting light, the lens is stationary and the darkness is created by a mechanical eclipse. Visualize a set of vertical metal shutters, like the slats of a blind standing open around the lamp. The light streams out steadily, a constant white gaze. Then, triggered by a clockwork cam, the shutters suddenly snap shut. Clack. Darkness. For 3 seconds, the light is hidden, occulted by the metal blades. Then just as suddenly, clack, they spring open and the light floods out again. This is not a sweeping beam. It is a heartbeat. It is a game of peekaboo played with ships at sea. Now I am here. Now I am hidden. The transition is instant, binary, sharp. It creates a very different rhythm than the lazy sweep of a rotating beam. It is a pulse of pure presence and absence, a mechanical blinking eye that watches the ocean with a stoic rhythmic vigilance. But light is not the only signal that emanates from the station. When the fog is too thick for beams and the compressed air horns were yet to be invented, the keepers relied on the fog bell. This was a massive bronze bell, often weighing 1 or 2 tons, suspended on the gallery or in a separate tower. Imagine the density of the fog, a wet grey blanket that dampens all sound. Silence feels heavy here. Then, a mechanical hammer, driven by the same clockwork weights as the lens, draws back and strikes the bronze lip. Dong! The note is mournful, metallic and incredibly loud. It is not a sharp clang, but a deep, resonant vibration that you can feel in your teeth if you're standing near it. The sound hangs in the damp air, decaying slowly, a sonic ripple pushing through the mist. The mechanism resets with a ratchet sound, pauses for its assigned interval, perhaps 10 seconds, and strikes again. Dong! It is a relentless, melancholy music. For the keeper, the bell was a constant companion during the grey days, a rhythmic tolling that marked the passage of invisible time. To the sailor, it was an auditory anchor, a singular, clear note ringing out from the void to say, "The rock is here, turn away." Above the bell, above the lens, crowning the entire structure, sits the lantern dome. This is the roof of the lighthouse, usually made of copper. When first installed, it would have been a shining penny brown gleaming in the sun, but time and the salt air are painters, and over the decades the copper oxidizes. Visualize the texture of this dome now, a rich, velvety verdigris green. It is the color of the Statue of Liberty, a hue that can only be created by the sea. The shape is aerodynamic, often a rounded ball or a graceful curve, designed to let the wind slip over it without finding purchase. Imagine standing inside the lantern room during a heavy rainstorm. The sound of the rain on the copper roof is a chaotic, drumming symphony. It is louder here than anywhere else, a torrent of noise that encapsulates you. Yet, you are dry. The copper is a shield, weathered and stained by a century of storms, yet impermeable. The green patina is not rot. It is a protective skin, a chemical reaction that seals the metal against the elements. It teaches us that change is not always degradation. Sometimes, the weathering of life creates a new layer of beauty and protection, turning us into something that can weather the storm even better than before. Now, let your mind sink down from the copper roof, down through the stone tower, past the kitchen, past the foundation, and submerge into the cold, clear water at the base of the lighthouse. Here, in the violent surf zone, lies a hidden forest, the kelp beds. The base of a lighthouse is often an ecosystem of abundance. Visualize the thick, rubbery stalks of bull kelp anchored fast to the rocks where the tower stands. These are not delicate plants. They are survivors. They grow in the most turbulent water on Earth. Picture the long, ribbon-like leaves, golden brown and green, swaying in the powerful surge of the tide. Back and forth, a mesmerizing slow-motion dance. The sunlight filters down from the surface in shifting shafts, illuminating the swaying forest. Fish dart between the stalks, finding sanctuary in the lee of the lighthouse reef. While the waves crash with fury above, down here, just 10 feet below, there is a rhythmic, silent swaying. The kelp yields to the water, bending flat with the surge, then standing tall again. It is the ultimate example of going with the flow. It does not fight the ocean, it dances with it, rooted to the same rock as the lighthouse, but surviving through flexibility rather than rigidity. Let us travel now to a specific rock, one that holds a deep emotional resonance for millions, Fresnel Rock, known as the Teardrop of Ireland. Located off the southern coast of County Cork, this was often the very last piece of Irish land seen by emigrants sailing to America during the 19th and early 20th centuries. Visualize the solitary, jagged silhouette of the rock rising from the wild Atlantic. The lighthouse perched upon it is a marvel of granite masonry, looking like a chess piece set against a grey sky. For those on the decks of the departing ships, leaning over the rails with tears in their eyes, the sweep of the fastnet beam was a final goodbye. It was the last connection to home, the final punctuation mark at the end of their life in the old world. The lighthouse stood as a stoic witness to this exodus, a silent observer of a million heartbreaks and a million new beginnings. Feel the emotion imbued in the stone. It is more than a navigational aid, it is a national monument to memory. To see the fastnet is to feel the weight of history, the mixture of sorrow and hope that define the journey across the ocean. It stands firm in the wildest of waters, a symbol of the enduring memory of home, no matter how far one travels. Finally, let us return to the quiet interior of the watchroom, to the desk where the keeper sits at the end of their shift. In front of them lies the station logbook. This is the memory of the lighthouse itself. Visualize the heavy, leather-bound ledger lying open on the desk. The pages are thick, cream-coloured paper, smelling faintly of mildew and ink. The keeper dips a nib pen into an inkwell. Scratch, 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 recording the details of the night. The handwriting is often beautiful, practiced cursive, a discipline maintained even in the wilderness. They record the wind direction, the barometric pressure, the time the light was lit, and the time it was extinguished. Wind SW, force 4, sea moderate, visibility good. But sometimes the entries are more personal, a note about a bird striking the glass, a mention of a letter received from home, a line about the feeling of the earthquake or the ferocity of a wave that shook the tower. These books are time capsules. Imagine running your finger down the column of dates, 1895, 1910, 1925. Day after day, year after year, the routine is unbroken. The logbook represents the quiet dignity of witnessing. It is the act of paying attention to the world, of noting the changes in the weather and the turning of the tides. It reminds us that our days, no matter how repetitive they may seem, are worth recording, that there is value in simply bearing witness to the passing of time and the state of the storm. As the ink dries on the page of the logbook, marking the end of the night shift, a new ritual begins with the rising of the sun. It is a ritual of reversal, for while the lighthouse wakes at dusk, it must sleep by day. This brings us to the quiet, domestic necessity of the lighthouse curtains. You might imagine a lighthouse is always open to the sky, but consider the physics of the great lens. It is a massive magnifying glass. If the morning sun were to shine into the lantern room and strike the prisms from the outside, the lens would focus the intense solar heat onto the lamp or the paintwork inside, potentially starting a fire. To prevent the tower from burning itself down, the keeper must dress the windows. Visualize the heavy cream-coloured linen curtains, thick and coarse to the touch. The keeper walks around the circular lantern room, taking the fabric in hand. Listen to the soft, rhythmic swish of the linen sliding along the brass rails, the gentle clink of the metal rings. One by one, the panels of glass are covered. The brilliant blue of the morning sky is softened, filtered into a warm, dim amber glow. The room, which was a cathedral of light all night, now becomes a cosy, shaded tent. There is a profound sense of closure in this act, a tucking in of the tower. It is a signal that the work is done, that the vigilance of the night has ended, and now the machinery, the glass and the keeper may rest in the cool, diffused shadows of the day. While the lantern room rests behind its linen veil, the exterior of the tower stands exposed to the harsh, stripping elements of the sea. Salt, wind, and sun are tireless eroders, and so the lighthouse demands constant renewal. Drift your imagination now to the suspended tranquility of the bosun's chair. Painting a lighthouse is not a matter of ladders, it is a matter of suspension. Visualize a simple wooden seat, dangling by a system of ropes and pulleys from the gallery railing high above. You're sitting in this chair, floating in the air 100 feet above the crashing surf. There is a unique feeling of weightlessness here, a gentle swaying in the breeze. In your hand is a brush heavy with thick white whitewash or oil paint. Smell the sharp, clean scent of the fresh paint, mixing with the brine of the ocean. Observe the contrast, the brilliant wet white you're applying against the deep weathered grey of the stone and the endless blue of the sky. The motion is repetitive and soothing. Dip, stroke, dip, stroke. You are dressing the tower in a fresh coat of armour. There is a meditative focus required to paint a straight line while suspended in the air. You're slowly descending inch by inch, erasing the wear of the winter, smoothing over the rough patches. It is an act of care, a slow, vertical journey of restoration, turning the rugged stone back into a pristine beacon that glimmers in the sunlight. As you hang suspended against the stone, you might notice a thick strip of copper running vertically down the entire length of the tower, from the copper dome to the sea. This is the lightning conductor, the tower's silent bodyguard. Lighthouses are often the tallest objects for miles, standing alone on high rocks, making them natural magnets for the fury of the storm. Without this strip of metal, a lightning strike could shatter the masonry or melt the lens. Visualize the violence of a thunderstorm, the sky tearing open with blinding violet light. The bolt seeks the tower, but instead of destruction, the energy is caught. Picture the electricity coursing down that copper ribbon, a river of pure fire guided safely past the glass, past the keeper's sleeping quarters, past the stone foundation. It is carried all the way down into the ocean, where it dissipates harmlessly into the depths. The copper strip is a grounding cord. It represents the ability to channel intense energy without holding on to it, to let the shock pass through and wash away. It allows the lighthouse to stand amidst the chaos, struck but not broken, a conduit that connects the fire of the sky to the water of the earth, remaining unharmed in the centre of the flow. Safe behind the lightning rod, let us step out onto the circular balcony that rings the lantern room, the gallery. This is the place of the panoramic view, the walkway of the winds. It is an iron grating or a stone path that offers a complete 360-degree perspective of the horizon. Imagine stepping out from the heavy iron door. The wind hits you immediately, a physical presence, ruffling your hair and cooling your skin. The air tastes of ozone and spray. You place your hands on the railing, cold, painted iron, sturdy and thick. You begin to walk. Because the gallery is circular, the walk has no beginning and no end. You can walk forever without turning back. As you move around the tower, the view shifts. To the east, the sun is rising over the mainland, painting the hills in gold. To the west, the open Atlantic stretches into infinity, a restless plain of slate grey. To the south, a fishing fleet bobbing like toys. Walking the gallery is a way of encompassing the world. It is a place to pace, to think, to breathe. Keepers would walk miles on this small ring, circling their charge, inspecting the horizon from every angle. It is a feeling of being on top of the world, detached from the land, floating in the centre of a vast blue circle, the monarch of all you survey. From this high vantage point, look out to the harbour entrance, and you might see not one, but two lights working in tandem. These are the range lights, also known as leading lights. They teach us the power of alignment. One lighthouse is built on the shore and another taller one is built further back inland. They are separated by distance, yet they are intimately connected. Imagine you are the captain of a ship approaching a treacherous channel. If you see the two lights separated, one to the left, one to the right, you're off course, you're in danger, you must turn the wheel. Slowly, as you adjust your path, the two lights begin to move closer together in your field of vision. Closer, closer, until, click. They stack perfectly, one directly on top of the other. Vertical alignment. In that moment of synchronization, you know you are exactly where you need to be. You're in this deep water, the safe channel. There is a profound satisfaction in this visual geometry, the locking in of the path. It is a navigational metaphor for inner alignment. When our values and our actions stack up perfectly, when the inner light aligns with the outer, we know we are on the safe course. We can move forward with confidence, guided by the unity of two separate beacons becoming one. Life at the lighthouse was not always strictly about navigation. For many, it was simply home. And where there is a home, there are children. Picture the unique, perilous and magical childhood of the lighthouse kids. For a child growing up on a wave-swept rock, the backyard was the Atlantic Ocean. But the danger was real. To keep them safe, parents would often tether the youngest children with long, soft ropes tied to the gallery railing or a central stake. Visualize a toddler playing on the stone gallery, a rope allowing them to explore but preventing them from wandering to the cliff's edge. Yet, within these boundaries, there was infinite wonder. Imagine tide pools serving as aquariums, filled with starfish, crabs, and anemones, explored every day at low tide. Imagine kites flown from the gallery that would soar higher and faster than any kite on the mainland, caught in the updrafts of the tower. These children learned to read the clouds before they learned to read books. They fell asleep not to lullabies, but to the rhythmic boom of the foghorn and the sweep of the light on their bedroom wall. It was a childhood of vast horizons and close family bonds, played out on a stage of granite and water, where the boundaries were stark, but the freedom of imagination was boundless. Let us return inside to the technology that made the light possible before the electric bulb. We have mentioned oil, but we must appreciate the specific invention that allowed it to burn brightly: the argon lamp. Invented by a Swiss physicist, this device changed the nature of the flame itself. Before the argon, wicks were simple, solid cords that burned with a lot of smoke and a weak light. Visualize the argon wick. It is woven into a hollow circle, like a sleeve. This shape is crucial. It allows air to flow not just around the outside of the flame, but through the center of it. Picture the flame itself. It is not a flickering tongue, but a perfect cylindrical ring of fire. It is steady, robust, and incredibly hot. Surrounding this ring of fire is a glass chimney, which creates a draft, sucking fresh oxygen upward to feed the combustion. The result is a light 7 times brighter than a candle, white and smokeless. It is a triumph of airflow. It teaches us that to burn brightly, we do not just need fuel, we need flow. We need the circulation of air, the open space in the center, the ability to let the breath pass through us. The argan lamp is a symbol of efficient breathing light, burning clean and strong through the darkest hours. With all this heat and combustion inside the small glass room of the lantern, the tower needed to breathe, or the glass would fog up and the keeper would suffocate. Look up to the very pinnacle of the roof, and you will see the ventilator ball. This is a copper sphere perched at the apex of the dome, pierced with specially designed slats. It is the nose of the lighthouse. It uses the heat of the lamp to create a chimney effect. As the hot air from the argon lamp rises, it rushes up towards the ball, carrying with it the exhaust and the stale air. As it escapes through the leeward side of the ball, it creates a vacuum that draws fresh, cool, salty air in through vents in the floor. Visualize this invisible cycle of breath. The lighthouse is inhaling cool air from the sea and exhaling hot air to the sky. It is a continuous, rhythmic respiration. Even in a gale, the ball is designed so that the wind cannot blow back down the pipe. The harder the wind blows, the better the suction. It is a perfect passive system. It reminds us that every structure and every person needs a way to release the heat and pressure, a way to keep the air moving, to stay clear and oxygenated amidst the work of shining. But not all lighthouses shine forever. There comes a time when the technology shifts, or the coastline changes, and the light is extinguished. Let us drift now to the poignant beauty of the abandoned lighthouse. Far from being sad places, these ruins are reclaimed by the peace of nature. Visualize a stone tower on a lonely island where the door has been locked for 50 years. The glass of the lantern room may be gone, leaving the gallery open to the sky. In the absence of the keeper, other residents have moved in. Picture a nest of peregrine falcons established in the watchroom, high above the rats and the snakes. Moss and orange lichen have begun to carpet the spiral stairs, softening the hard edges of the stone. The silence here is absolute, save for the wind whistling through the empty window frames. The structure has transitioned from a machine to a monument. It stands now only for itself. It has done its work. It has saved its ships. Now it rests, slowly crumbling back into the rock from which it was quarried. There is a serenity in this retirement, a slow, graceful returning to the earth, watching the sunrises and sunsets with no duty to perform, simply existing as a beautiful stone shell in the embrace of the wild. Finally, let us focus on a small, tangible object that represents the beginning and the end of the keeper's tenure, the lighthouse key. This is not a small modern key. Visualize a heavy skeleton key made of solid brass, perhaps 4 or 5 inches long. It has a weight to it, a cold solidity in the palm of your hand. It hangs on a specific hook by the door, or sits deep in the pocket of a wool coat. This key unlocks the heavy oak or iron door at the base of the tower. The sound of it turning in the lock is a distinct mechanical clunk-click, the sound of security. To hold this key was to hold the responsibility for the lives of thousands of sailors. It was passed from hand to hand, from generation to generation. When a keeper retired, the handing over of the key was the ceremonial transfer of the burden and the honour. Imagine the feeling of closing that heavy door against a winter storm, turning the brass key and knowing that the chaos is locked out and safety is locked in. It is a symbol of access to the sanctuary, the tool that secures the boundary between the wild ocean and the warm, spiralling world of the tower. With that heavy brass key safe in your pocket, symbolising the security of the tower, let your attention drift to the other brass surfaces that gleam within the lantern room. This brings us to the keeper's most constant meditative ritual, the polishing. In the golden age of lighthouses before stainless steel and plastic, the interior of the lantern was a palace of polished brass and bronze. Every fitting, every handrail, every vent cover was metal that needed to be cared for against the corrosive assault of the salt air. Visualize the sensory details of this work. The keeper would use a soft velvet cloth and a substance known as jeweler's rouge, a fine pink powder made of iron oxide mixed with oil to form a paste. Imagine the smell of this polish, metallic, oily, and sharp, a scent of industry and cleanliness. The motion is repetitive, circular, and soothing. Rub, rub, wipe. Hour after hour, the keeper works the dull oxidation away until the metal beneath warms and begins to glow like liquid gold. This was not just cleaning, it was a devotion to reflection. The brass fittings were polished to such a high degree that they would mirror the flame of the lamp, adding their own small warmth to the beacon. Imagine the satisfaction of running your hand along a handrail that feels as smooth as glass, your fingers leaving no mark, the metal feeling cool and substantial. It is a lesson in maintenance, teaching us that to keep things shining in a harsh environment requires a gentle, persistent, and daily touch. From the gleaming brass at eye level, cast your gaze downward to the floor of the lantern room or the entrance hall. Here, often inlaid directly into the stone or wood, you will find the compass rose. A lighthouse is not just a building, it is a fixed point of truth on the map, and the compass rose is its anchor to the cardinal directions. Visualize a beautiful mosaic of black and white tiles, or perhaps marquetry of dark mahogany and light maple, forming the classic 8-pointed star. North, south, east, west. The letters are often ornate, stylized in a Victorian script. Standing in the centre of this rose, you're standing in the centre of alignment. While the ships at sea are constantly turning, fighting the drift of the current and the push of the wind, the lighthouse remains absolutely oriented. It knows exactly where north is. Imagine placing your feet on that compass, aligning your body with the axis of the world. There is a profound grounding energy here. To be the keeper was to be the one who knows the directions when everyone else is lost. It serves as a reminder that no matter how much the world spins around you, or how chaotic the storms of life may become, there is a place of stillness within, a compass rose in the floor of the soul that always points true. Beneath the floor where the compass lies, deep in the foundation of the tower, rests a hidden reservoir of life, the cistern. On a rock surrounded by 1 billion gallons of salt water, fresh water is more precious than gold. The lighthouse had to catch every drop of rain that fell from the sky, visualize the gutters running along the copper dome in the gallery, channeling the rain into downspouts that dive deep into the masonry. Down in the cool, dark belly of the tower, hollowed out of the solid rock or built into the stone base, is the water tank. Imagine lifting the heavy iron cover in the floor of the kitchen and peering down. It is pitch black, but if you drop a pebble, plink, the sound echoes, ringing against the wet stone walls. The water here is still, cool and sweet. It tastes of the sky. In the heat of summer, drawing a bucket of this water was a refreshing gift. It represents the ability to harvest what is given, to gather the resources that fall naturally upon us, and to store them deep within our foundations for the times when we need them. It is the deep subconscious reservoir of the tower, a hidden pool of sustenance that supports the light above. Having quenched our thirst from the cool cistern, let us ascend to the living quarters to find rest. Because the lighthouse is a cylinder, the furniture must often adapt to the geometry of the circle. This leads to the unique design of the lighthouse bunk. Picture a sleeping nook built directly into the curve of the wall. It is not a freestanding bed. It is a cabinetry masterpiece, often called a box bed, enclosed on 3 sides by the warm, varnished wood of the tower's liner. To sleep here is to sleep in a gentle embrace. The mattress is cut to a slight curve, fitting the arc of the room. Heavy wool curtains, perhaps a deep navy blue or a tartan pattern, can be drawn across the front of the nook, shutting out the world completely. Imagine crawling into this cosy wooden cave. The wind may be howling outside, a gale force scream, but inside the box bed the air is still and warm. The sound of the storm is muffled, reduced to a distant vibration in the stone. It is the ultimate sanctuary, a nest within a fortress. The slight curve of the bed cradles the body, preventing you from rolling out if the tower shudders under the impact of a massive wave. It is a place of profound safety, a small private parenthesis in the vertical sentence of the tower. Waking from a rest in the box bed, the keeper might need to communicate with a passing ship during the day, not with light, but with colour. This brings us to the signal flag locker. Before radio, the sea was a silent place, and ships spoke in the language of fluttering silk. Visualize a wooden cabinet with many small square cubby holes like a honeycomb. In each cubby is a folded bundle of fabric. These are the flags of the International Code of Signals. The colours are vibrant and primary, stark canary yellows, deep ocean blues, blood reds, and crisp whites. Each pattern has a meaning. A yellow and blue square means, I require a pilot. A red diamond on white means, I am disabled. Imagine the tactile sensation of the keeper reaching into the locker, the silk cool and slippery against the fingers. They select the flags, clipping them onto the halyard line one by one. As they hoist them up the flagpole on the gallery, the wind catches them. Snap, snap, snap. The sound of the fabric whipping in the breeze is sharp and energetic. Against the grey sky, these flags are bursts of joy and intent. They are a visual language, a way of shouting across the water without making a sound. It reminds us that communication can be beautiful, a colourful display of intent unfurled against the backdrop of the elements, signalling our needs and our status to the watching world. Not all lighthouses rise from the waves on lonely rocks. Some stand as guardians on high, grassy cliffs. For these headland lights, the journey to work is not by boat, but along the cliff path. This path is a transition zone between the solid earth and the wild air. Visualize a narrow dirt trail winding its way along the edge of a precipice. The grass here is short and springy, cropped close by the wind and the rabbits. In the spring, the path is lined with sea thrift, small globular flowers of soft pink that bob in the breeze, and yellow gorse that smells faintly of coconut. As you walk this path toward the white tower in the distance, you can hear the cry of gulls below you and the sound of the surf washing against the rocks hundreds of feet down. The air changes as you approach the point. It becomes charged, heavier with salt. The path is a physical tether, a ribbon of brown earth that connects the village, the home, and the safety of land to the exposed duty of the light. Walking it is a daily meditation, a commute through the raw beauty of nature, leaving the complexity of the land behind to step into the singular purpose of the edge. Inside the tower, nestled in the storage room, sits a crate that holds the most fragile line of defence, the spare storm panes. The glass of the lantern room is not ordinary window glass. It is thick, heavy plate glass, often half an inch or more, designed to withstand the impact of a stunned bird or a rogue wave thrown high by the storm. But sometimes the ocean is too strong. A rock thrown like a cannonball by the surf can shatter a window. Visualize the tension and the preparedness of the spare pane. It sits in a padded wooden rack ready for the emergency. It is a heavy rectangular slab of transparency, greenish at the edges like a block of ice. Imagine the physical struggle of replacing a broken pane during a storm. The wind would be screaming through the shattered gap, rain lashing the lens. The keeper must wrestle this heavy sheet of glass into the iron frame, sealing it with putty, fighting the pressure of the gale. The spare pane represents redundancy and resilience. It is the knowledge that things will break, that the barrier will be breached, but that we have the means to repair it. We carry the spare parts we need. It sits quietly in the dark, a silent promise that the breach can be closed and the integrity of the sanctuary restored. In this solitary life of storms and repairs, the keeper often had a companion that was not human. Enter the lighthouse dog. While cats were common for mice, dogs were the soul of the station. These were not small lap dogs, but sturdy working breeds, Newfoundlands, Labradors or Collies, dogs with thick, water-resistant coats. Picture a large black dog sitting on the gallery, nose pointed into the wind, sniffing the incoming weather. Their fur is matted with salt spray, their paws tough against the granite. They were the alert system, barking at the seals on the rocks, or the sound of an approaching boat long before the keeper heard it. Imagine the warmth of the dog lying across the keeper's feet in the watchroom during the long, cold night. In the isolation of the rock, the dog offered an uncritical, loving presence. They were happy simply to be there. Watching a dog play in the tide pools, chasing driftwood in the surf, brought a sense of normalcy and play to a serious place. They were the grounding element, a creature of the earth living comfortably in a world of water, reminding the keeper that joy can be found even on a barren rock. At the very pinnacle of the lighthouse, even higher than the ventilator ball, stands the wind vane. Before digital anemometers, this simple metal arrow was the keeper's primary instrument for reading the invisible river of air. Visualize the vane, often crafted from copper or iron, perhaps shaped like a traditional rooster, a ship, or a simple, elegant arrow. It sits on a pivot that must be perfectly balanced and greased, allowing it to swing with the slightest breath of a breeze. Squeak, creak. The sound is faint, a metallic whisper that travels down the chimney. The keeper knows the wind not just by feel, but by the orientation of this silhouette against the sky. If the arrow points northeast, the cold is coming. If it points southwest, the rain is coming. It is the finger of the tower, constantly pointing into the source of the energy. It teaches us to face what is coming, to turn our attention directly into the wind, not to hide from it. By facing the wind, the vane remains stable. It finds the path of least resistance by confronting the force head-on. Finally, let us wait for the storm to pass and the morning to break. When the sun rises and the lamp is extinguished, a magical transformation occurs inside the lantern room. The prism rainbows. The Fresnel lens is a machine of refraction, designed to bend light. Usually it bends the light of the lamp outwards, but when the sunlight strikes it from the outside, the process is reversed. Visualize the morning sun hitting the massive glass beehive. The prisms catch the white sunlight and break it apart into its constituent colours. Suddenly, the interior of the lantern room is painted with spectral fire. Intense bands of violet, indigo, blue, green, yellow, orange and red wash over the white walls, the brass fittings, and the floor. It is as if you are standing inside a kaleidoscope. The colours slowly rotate as the sun moves across the sky. The air itself seems to shimmer. It is a silent, secret light show, seen only by the keeper and the dust motes dancing in the air. This phenomenon is a reminder of the hidden beauty within the glass. The same tool that guides ships by night becomes an artist by day, transforming the simple, white light of the sun into a complex, breathtaking masterpiece of colour, filling the room with the vibrant, silent music of the spectrum. As the kaleidoscopic dance of the prism rainbows fades with the shifting sun, we are reminded that light, in its purest form, relies on the existence of its opposite. To define the beam, we must have the night. To direct the path, we must sometimes block the view. This brings us to the necessary quietude of the dark sector. While the lighthouse is designed to shine, there are specific slices of the horizon where the beam is deliberately extinguished. Visualize the lantern room not as a ring of total transparency, but as a space where certain angles are masked by heavy, black metal panels called blanking screens. This is not a failure of the light, but a courtesy of it. Imagine a village nestled on the cliffs behind the lighthouse. If the massive beam were to sweep across their bedroom windows every 5 seconds, sleep would be impossible. Or picture a ship's bridge navigating a tricky channel nearby. The glare of the main light might blind the captain to the dim red buoys in the water. So, the engineers carve out a wedge of shadow. Standing in this sector on the land, you're in the acoustic shadow of the light. You can hear the sea, you can feel the tower's presence, but you are draped in a protective velvet darkness. It is a profound lesson in boundaries that even the most powerful guidance must know where not to shine, that rest is as important as vigilance, and that sometimes the greatest gift a guardian can offer is the comfort of the dark. From this deliberate shadow, cast your eyes upward and outward, away from the land and into the humid, heavy atmosphere of the open ocean. Before a sailor ever sees the lighthouse lamp itself, they often see its ghost. This phenomenon is known as the loom of the light. Picture a night that is overcast, where low, heavy clouds hang like a ceiling over the water. The lighthouse is far below the horizon, hidden by the curve of the earth. You cannot see the tower, you cannot see the bulb, but as the beam sweeps around, it strikes the underside of the clouds. Visualize a rhythmic, fan-like glow sweeping across the sky, a pulsing aura of white light painted on the grey canvas of the clouds. Sweep, darkness, sweep, darkness. It looks like the breathing of a giant. This loom extends the reach of the lighthouse by miles, projecting its presence into the heavens. It is a comforting hallucination, a signal that exists only as a reflection. It teaches us that our influence often reaches further than we can see, reflecting off the atmosphere around us, announcing our presence long before we ourselves arrive. Bringing our focus back from the clouds to the physical structure of the lantern room, let us examine the skeleton that holds the glass in place. These are the astragals. In the early days of lighthouse engineering, the glass panes were small and fragile, requiring a thick grid of vertical and horizontal metal bars to hold them together. However, these bars created a problem. Every time the light passed behind a vertical bar, the beam was briefly interrupted, causing a flicker. Visualize the solution found in the diagonal astragal. Instead of a square grid, the engineers began to design lantern rooms with diamond-shaped panes, held by bronze bars that spiraled diagonally around the room. Picture the geometry of this cage. It is strong, resisting the wind from any angle, but more importantly, it is optically pure. As the lens rotates, the beam never hits a flat vertical obstruction. It slides smoothly across the diagonal bars, ensuring the light remains constant. Run your fingers in your mind along these bronze ribs. They are cool, weathered, and strong. They frame the view of the world in diamonds. They represent the marriage of strength and clarity, the structural support that holds the transparency without blocking the light, a lattice of bronze that allows the vision to remain unbroken. Inside this diamond-paned room, the keeper's life was one of vast, empty hours waiting to be filled. When the brass was polished and the logbook signed, the mine needed a focal point. This gave rise to the intricate, microscopic hobby of the ship in a bottle. Visualize the keeper sitting at a small wooden table, the storm raging outside, reducing the world to a chaotic blur. But under the glow of a kerosene lamp, their world narrows down to the neck of a glass bottle. In their hands, they hold long, delicate tweezers and threads as fine as spider silk. They are building a miniature universe. Piece by piece, a tiny schooner with paper sails and matchstick masts is assembled. Imagine the impossible patience required. The ship must be built flat, collapse like a fan, slip through the narrow neck, and then, with a gentle tug of a string, raised into full, glorious volume. It is a feat of engineering that mirrors the lighthouse itself, a vessel of hope encased in glass. The silence of the tower is poured into this work. It is a meditation on control, creating a perfect, contained reality within a bottle, while the uncontained reality of the ocean crashes against the walls. This patience and discipline were not just hobbies, they were worn on the body. Let us feel the texture of the keeper's uniform. To be a keeper was to be a member of a uniformed service, often under the jurisdiction of a national body like the Trinity House in the UK or the Lighthouse Service in the US. Visualize the heavy, dark navy wool of the dress coat. It is thick, scratchy, and smells of mothballs and sea air. It is a garment designed for dignity and warmth. down the front runs a double row of brass buttons. Look closely at one of these buttons. It is not plain. It is embossed with a symbol, perhaps a lighthouse standing on a rock, or the seal of the nation. These buttons were polished just as religiously as the lens. When the keeper buttoned this coat, they were not just dressing for work, they were donning an identity. They became the wiki, the guardian. The uniform commanded respect. Even on a rock where no one else would see them for months, the keepers would often dress for dinner or for the lighting of the lamp. It was a way of maintaining order in the wilderness, a layer of civilized cloth standing firm against the raw elemental indifference of the sea. While the uniform protected the keeper from the cold, the atmosphere sometimes created its own ghostly architecture around the tower. On days of thick, bright mist, a rare and beautiful phenomenon can occur, the fog bow. We all know the rainbow, born of rain and sun. But the fog bow is its spectral cousin, born of much smaller water droplets. Visualize standing on the gallery, the world erased by a luminous white fog. Suddenly, the sun breaks through behind you. In front of you, arching over the ocean, a perfect bow appears. But it is not colourful. It is a stark, glowing white arch, perhaps with the faintest tinge of red on the outside and blue on the inside. It is often called a white rainbow, or a ghost bow. It looks like a gateway to another world, a portal made of light and mist. It is ethereal, silent and fleeting. To see one is to feel as though the colour has been washed out of the world, leaving only the pure structure of light itself. It frames the lighthouse in a halo of white fire, a silent benediction from the moisture of the air. Turning from the ethereal mist to the solid necessities of survival, let us descend the spiral stairs to the lighthouse pantry. In a place cut off from the nearest market by miles of dangerous water, the pantry was the treasury of the tower. Open the curved wooden door and step into this cool circular room. The walls are lined with shelves that follow the arc of the tower. Visualize the abundance stored here. There are rows of tin cans, peaches, corned beef, condensed milk, stacked with geometric precision. There are sacks of flour and sugar, barrels of salted pork, and jars of pickled onions. The smell is distinct, a mixture of dry goods, spices, and the cool stone dampness of the tower. This room represents security. No matter how high the waves rise outside, inside there is tea to be brewed and bread to be baked. The keeper knew exactly how many weeks of food remained. It is a feeling of prepared self-reliance, the comfort of a full larder in a lonely place, ensuring that life can be sustained even when the connection to the world is severed. Sustaining the tower itself was the work of the original builders, men whose names are often lost to history. But if you look closely at the granite blocks of the base, you might find their secret signatures, the mason's marks. Drift your mind down to the massive dovetailed stones that make up the foundation. These blocks were cut by hand in a quarry on the mainland, sometimes years before they were laid. Each stonemason had a unique symbol, an arrow, a triangle, a stylized letter, that they would chisel into the face of the rock to claim their work and ensure payment. Over time, the wind and waves wear these marks away, but in the sheltered crevices they remain. Visualize running your fingertips over the rough granite and finding a small chiseled hourglass or a star. It is a tactile connection to the human hands that built this mountain. It is a whisper from the past, a reminder that this monolith is not a natural formation, but a puzzle pieced together by individual men who left their mark on the edge of the world, signing their name in stone against the eternity of the sea. Occasionally, the sea offers a gift back to the rock, depositing fuel at the base of the tower. This brings us to the sensory experience of the driftwood fire. Wood that has floated in the ocean for months undergoes a chemical change. It becomes saturated with salts and minerals. Visualize the keeper gathering these smooth, grey, sun-bleached shapes from the tide pools. They are light, worn soft by the waves, looking like bones of the ocean. When the evening comes and the chill sets in, the keeper places this wood into the cast iron stove. Watch the flames as they catch. They do not burn with the simple yellow-orange of landwood. Because of the salt, the driftwood burns with mystical colours, vivid violets, deep teals, and electric blues. It is a northern lights display contained within the grate. The smell is aromatic and sharp, a scent of burning brine and history. Sitting before this colourful fire, the keeper is warmed by the ocean itself, watching the energy of the waves released as light and heat. A final, colourful story told by the wood as it returns to ash. While the fire crackles, there are places around the lighthouse where sound behaves strangely. We spoke of the shadow of light, but there is also the acoustic shadow of the fog signal. Sound does not always travel in a straight line. It can bounce, curve, and skip. Imagine a massive foghorn located on the roof of the lighthouse, blasting a deafening warning out to sea. Logic suggests that if you were standing at the base of the tower, the noise would be unbearable. But often, there is a cone of silence directly beneath the horn. The sound waves project outward and upward, leaping over the immediate vicinity. Visualize standing on the gallery, directly under the trumpet of the horn. You can feel the vibration in your chest, the physical thrum of the air, but the sound itself seems muffled, distant, as if it is happening somewhere else. Yet, a mile away, a fisherman hears it as a thunderclap. It is a disorienting, peaceful paradox, to be at the epicenter of the noise yet untouched by it. It teaches us that sometimes the safest place to be is right in the eye of the storm, right at the source of the broadcast, where the waves pass over you, leaving you in a quiet, vibrating sanctuary of your own. From that curious acoustic sanctuary where the roar of the foghorn is silenced by the geometry of the air, let us drift to a time when compressed air was not enough, when the fog was so thick and the coast so treacherous that only an explosion could pierce the veil. This brings us to the explosive fog signal. Visualize a long iron arm, called a jib, extending from the gallery of the lighthouse, reaching out over the abyss like a fishing rod made of steel. Suspended at the end of this arm is not a lantern, but a charge of gun cotton. The keeper, wearing heavy protection, must winch this charge out into the damp grey void. Click, click, click goes the winch. When the charge is far enough away to protect the glass of the lantern room, an electrical current is sent down the wire. Picture the result: a sudden, sharp crack of thunder that defies the dampening power of the mist. It is a concussive shockwave that hits the chest of the sailor miles away. Unlike the mournful groan of the horn, this is a sharp report, a crack of the whip that says danger with undeniable urgency. Imagine the rhythm of this violence. Every 5 minutes, a new charge is loaded, winched out, and detonated. The lighthouse becomes a cannon of safety, fighting the silence of the fog with the thunder of invention. It is a harsh, jarring duty, yet there is a rhythm to it, a repetitive firing line against the elements, ensuring that even when the eyes are blind, the ears can still find the boundary of the shore. The mechanism that triggered these explosions, and indeed the mechanism that eventually replaced the keeper's hand on the light switch, relies on a principle of genius known as the sun valve. Invented by the Nobel Prize winner Gustave Dalén, who himself was blinded by an experiment, this device allowed lighthouses to become thinking machines. Visualize a simple glass cylinder containing 4 metal rods. 3 of the rods are polished gold, shining and reflective. The 4th rod, located in the center, is coated in a matte, absorbing black. It sits on the gallery, exposed to the sky. When the sun rises, the light hits the rods. The gold rods reflect the heat and stay cool. But the black rod absorbs the sunlight, growing warm. As it warms, it expands, microscopically, perhaps only a fraction of a millimeter. But this tiny expansion is enough. It pushes down on a lever, cutting off the gas flow and extinguishing the light. When the sun sets, or when a heavy dark cloud rolls in, the black rod cools and contracts. The lever lifts, the gas flows, and the light reignites. It is a device of pure elegance, requiring no electricity, no batteries, only the heat of the star it is meant to replace. Imagine the silence of this operation. As the twilight deepens, the black rod shrinks, and the lighthouse wakes up on its own. It is a perfect synchronization with the cosmos, a machine that breathes in the heat of the day and exhales the light of the night. The fuel controlled by this delicate valve was often acetylene gas, a substance with its own unique sensory character. Before the sterile silence of electric bulbs, many lighthouses breathed with the chuffing sound of gas. Visualize the interior of the lantern room filled with a faint, sweet, garlic-like odour, the telltale scent of acetylene. The flame produced by this gas is not the soft yellow of oil. It is a piercing, brilliant white, crisp and intense. Because the gas is pressurized, the light can be made to flash by snapping the valve open and closed rapidly. Listen to the sound of an acetylene flasher. Hiss, click, hiss, click. It is the sound of a mechanical lung. The light does not just shine, it pops into existence and vanishes, sharp and digital in its precision. This gas allowed lighthouses to be automated for the first time, left alone for months on remote skerries. The Dalen light brings to mind a sense of independent resilience, a small hissing flame burning brightly in the middle of a winter storm, fed by a tank of steel, doing its job with a rhythmic gaseous pulse long after the humans have gone home. To build a tower that could hold such a light, engineers often had to go where no human belongs, deep beneath the surface of the mud. This brings us to the caisson foundation, a construction technique of immense danger and claustrophobia. Visualize a massive, bottomless iron cylinder, like a giant overturned cup, lowered into the ocean until it hits the seabed. To keep the water out, compressed air is pumped into the chamber, pushing the ocean back. Inside this pressurized bubble, at the bottom of the sea, men, known as sandhogs, would dig the foundation. Imagine descending into this caisson. The air is thick, hot, and heavy. Your voice sounds strange, high-pitched and tinny, due to the density of the air. You're working by the light of flickering lamps, ankle-deep in mud, with the crushing weight of the Atlantic Ocean just inches away, held back only by invisible air pressure. You're digging into the earth to plant the roots of the tower. It is a place of shadows and sweat, the subterranean underworld that supports the celestial light above. Every bucket of sand removed allows the massive tower to sink a little deeper, finding its purchase in the bedrock. It reminds us that the soaring height of the lighthouse is only possible because of the dark, pressurized depths to which its foundation has been sunk. But returning from those depths came with a terrible price, a phenomenon known to the workers as the bends, or caisson disease. The lighthouse stands as a monument to safety, but its construction often involved a battle with human physiology. Visualize the nitrogen bubbles forming in the blood, like champagne uncorked, when a worker ascends too quickly from the high-pressure foundation to the surface. It is a silent agony. The joints lock, the body bends in pain. In the 19th century, this was a mysterious, invisible enemy. It adds a layer of solemnity to the lighthouse. When you look at a tower rising effortlessly from the waves, picture the unseen sacrifice woven into its base. The stone is not just granite, it is solidified courage. The stability of the light was bought with the endurance of men who worked in the crushing grip of the deep, teaching us that the most stable things in our lives are often built upon a history of immense pressure and the slow, careful decompression of effort. Rising from the pressure of the deep to the electrical charge of the high atmosphere, we encounter a phenomenon that has terrified and awed sailors for millennia: St. Elmo's fire. A lighthouse is a lightning rod, but sometimes before the strike, the air itself becomes luminous. Imagine a night where the storm is so electrically charged that the atmosphere begins to buzz. You're standing on the gallery railing. Suddenly a soft blue-violet glow appears at the tips of your fingers. The iron railing begins to flame with a cold, ghost-like fire. This is plasma, air molecules tearing apart under the stress of the electric field. It emits a hissing sound, like bacon frying or a tearing sheet. The light is not hot. It is a coronal discharge. It dances on the top of the lantern dome. It halos the weather vane. To the ancient mariners, this was a sign of the saints. To the keeper, it is a sign of imminent power. The world is saturated with energy. The lighthouse becomes a conduit, glowing with the ambient fire of the storm. It is a moment of surreal beauty, where the boundary between the material world and the energy of the sky dissolves, and the tower itself wears a crown of blue electric thorns. Inside the lantern room, safe from the blue fire, the lens is held in place by a structure of immense delicacy known as the spider frame. While the glass does the work of refracting, the spider does the work of holding. Visualize a lattice of gunmetal or bronze, intricate and fine, looking like the web of a golden orb weaver. It must be strong enough to hold tons of glass against the vibration of the storm, yet thin enough not to block the light. The metal is often cast in beautiful curved shapes, chamfered to a knife edge to minimize the shadow it casts. Trace the lines of this metal with your mind. It creates a geometric cage, a skeleton for the jewel. The contrast between the heavy, clear glass and the thin, dark metal is visually satisfying. It is the marriage of the transparent and the opaque. The spider frame teaches us about support that stays out of the way, the strength that allows the brilliance to shine through without drawing attention to itself, the quiet, structural integrity that makes the miracle of the lens possible. Within this cage of glass and bronze, there is a visual secret known only to those who stand inside the lens, the ghost reflection. The optics are designed to send light out, but inevitably some light bounces back. Imagine standing inside the giant lens at night. You're not looking out at the sea, you're looking at the glass itself. In the facets of the prisms, you see the reflection of the lantern room repeated 1,000 times. You see your own face, distorted and multiplied, staring back from the crystal walls. You see the flame or the bulb, infinite in number, creating a tunnel of lights that recedes into the glass. It is a hall of mirrors, a kaleidoscopic feedback loop. This internal world is silent and glittering, a private universe of light that exists only for the keeper. It is a reminder that even as we project our energy outward to the world, there is always a reflection returning inward, a complex, multifaceted portrait of the self held within the glass of our own perceptions. Beyond the glass, across the miles of dark water, lies the experience that the lighthouse exists to create, the landfall. This is not a fact about the structure, but about the sensory moment of its reception. Put yourself on the deck of a ship that has been at sea for 3 weeks. You have seen nothing but the flat, indifferent horizon. The world has been blue and grey. You're tired, your skin is salty, your equilibrium is attuned to the roll of the ocean. Then, in the middle of the night, a tiny pinprick of light appears on the edge of the world. Flash, darkness, flash. It is the first solid thing you have seen in passing days. But before you even see the light, you often smell the land. The lighthouse marks the point where the scent of the ocean, clean, sharp and sterile, mixes with the scent of the earth. Imagine the smell of wet soil, pine trees, wood smoke and grass drifting over the water to greet you. The light is the visual anchor, but the smell is the emotional one. The landfall is the release of tension. It is the knowledge that the liquid wilderness has an end, that there is a place where the foot can stand steady. The lighthouse is the star that has come down to earth to say, you are no longer lost. But before the landfall is complete, the ship must navigate the final dangers. To do this, they often look for the daymark pattern, specifically the barber pole spiral. While we mentioned stripes before, the spiral is a unique feat of painting. Visualize a lighthouse painted with a black and white helix, twisting from the base to the lantern. This is not just for style. A spiral is the only shape that looks the same from every angle. A square tower looks different if you see it from the corner versus the flat side. A vertical stripe might be hidden if the tower is turned. but a spiral wraps the structure in a continuous infinite loop. Imagine the vertigo of the painters creating this line, having to calculate the curve so that it appears straight from the sea. The spiral creates a sense of upward motion, as if the lighthouse is screwing itself into the sky. It is a hypnotic pattern that draws the eye upward. To the sailor, it creates a distinct vibration against the horizon, a shape that cannot be found in nature. Nature makes vertical trees and horizontal horizons, but it rarely makes perfect black and white spirals. It is the ultimate signal of human artifice, a deliberate twisting declaration of order standing tall against the chaotic organic background of the sea. That spiraling black and white helix, standing as a testament to human order, relies on the ground beneath it to remain firm. But the coastline is not static. It is a living, shifting edge where the ocean perpetually consumes the land. Sometimes, the battle is lost and the tower must retreat. This brings us to the slow, monumental migration of the Cape Hatteras lighthouse. Visualize a structure made of 5,000 tons of granite and brick, taller than a 20-story building, which has stood for a century. The ocean has crept closer, the waves now lapping at its very foundation. To save it, engineers did the impossible. They made the lighthouse walk. Picture the scene. The massive tower severed from its granite base and lifted onto a grid of steel beams. Beneath these beams lie heavy steel rollers, resting on a track of rails lubricated with soap, simple, slippery bars of soap. Close your eyes and try to sense the imperceptible movement. Hydraulic jacks push with the force of giants. The tower moves 5 feet at a time. It is a glacial journey, a castle sliding inland on a river of steel and soap. It moves so slowly that if you watched it, you would see no motion, yet over weeks the landscape shifts. The ocean recedes into the distance, and the safety of the maritime forest approaches. It is a surreal image of preservation, the stoic sentinel, usually so rooted and immovable, taking a slow, dignified step back from the brink, proving that even the heaviest burdens can be moved if one has enough patience, enough grease, and enough will to survive the encroaching tide. As the tower settles into its new home and the sun beats down upon it, a subtle chemical transformation is happening in the windows high above. This is the phenomenon of solarized glass. In the 19th century, glassmakers added manganese to the sand mixture to ensure the glass was perfectly clear. But they did not account for the slow, relentless chemistry of sunlight. Visualize the window panes of an old lighthouse. They are not clear, nor are they dirty. They have turned a delicate, translucent shade of amethyst. This is not a stain. It is a molecular shift caused by decades of ultraviolet radiation. The sun has literally bruised the glass into a shade of violet. Imagine standing inside the lantern room of an old desert island light, looking out at the blue ocean through a pane of pale purple. The world is tinted with the colour of royalty and spirit. It is a beautiful accident of time. The longer the glass stands witness to the sun, the deeper the purple becomes. It teaches us that exposure to the light changes us, that the very act of letting the light pass through us over the years adds a colour and character that wasn't there at the start, turning transparency into a jewel-toned record of endurance. Holding these amethyst panes in place is a substance that offers its own sensory experience, litharge. Before modern silicone and rubber gaskets, the precious prisms of the Fresnel lens were cemented together with a putty made from red lead and linseed oil. Bring your focus to the intricate veins of the lens. Between the sparkling crystal ridges of the glass, there are thin, distinct lines of a soft matte pink or salmon colour. This is the litharge. Smell the faint, oily, artistic scent of the linseed, a smell reminiscent of an old painter's studio. The glazier had to work quickly and precisely, pressing this red paste between the glass ribs before it hardened into stone. It is the connective tissue of the light. It absorbs the vibration of the tower, preventing the glass from cracking against itself. The contrast is visually striking. The diamond-bright clarity of the glass framed by the soft, earthy red of the putty. It reminds us that strength often requires a soft buffer, that the hardest materials need a yielding bond to hold them together without shattering under the stress of the world. From the static bond of the lithoedge, let us look at the dynamic play of light and structure. As the lens rotates, the metal astragals, the bars holding the glass, pass in front of the lamp. While the diagonal bars minimize the flicker, the great wheel of the lens itself still creates a phenomenon known as the shadow spokes. Imagine you're rowing a small boat toward the lighthouse on a misty night. You're not looking at the light itself, but at the air around it. As the beam sweeps the sky, you see distinct dark bands rotating within the cone of light, like the spokes of a massive wagon wheel turning in the heavens. These are the shadows of the lens frames, projected outward for miles. Light, shadow, light, shadow. They turn with a hypnotic rhythmic majesty. On the water's surface, these shadows sweep over the waves like the hands of a clock. If a bird flies through the beam, it flickers in and out of these dark corridors. It is a reminder that there is no light without obstruction, that the very structure that holds the light up casts its own shadow into the world, creating a great rotating mandala of brightness and dark that marks the passage of time on the face of the deep. Below the rotating shadows, down on the solid earth of the station, there is another circle being drawn, not by light, but by feet. This is the Keeper's Walk. In the immense solitude of the station where there is nowhere to go, the human body still craves movement. Visualize a ring of trodden grass or a worn groove in the gravel, circling the base of the tower. Day after day, year after year, the Keeper walks this circuit. It is a path to nowhere, a physical mantra. Listen to the crunch of boots on stone, step, 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 a rhythm that calms the mind. The circle is perhaps 50 paces long, 10 laps is a mile. The Keeper walks with hands clasped behind their back, head down against the wind, ruminating, planning, or simply emptying the mind. This groove in the earth is a testament to the need for routine in the face of infinity. It is a boundary drawn by feet, a small claimed territory of order. To walk the circle is to create a sense of progress even when standing still, winding the internal clock of the body to match the rotation of the external world. Sometimes, however, the isolation of the circle is broken by an arrival. But on the most precipitous rock lighthouses, there is no dock, no beach, no place for a boat to land. To enter the tower, one must submit to the basket. Visualize a small boat bobbing violently in the trough of the waves at the base of a vertical cliff. High above, a crane arm swings out from the lighthouse gallery. A rope descends, carrying a simple wicker basket or a canvas loop. You must stand up in the rocking boat, time the swell of the ocean, and step into this fragile vessel. Suddenly, you are lifted. Feel the lurch of gravity as the winch engages. You're swinging in the air, suspended by a single cable, dangling between the crashing surf and the safety of the gallery door. The wind spins you slowly. The boat below shrinks to a toy. It is a moment of total surrender. You cannot climb, you must be lifted. The ascent is a transition from the chaotic, horizontal world of the water to the stable, vertical world of the stone. It is a terrifying and exhilarating birth into the sanctuary of the tower, a literal ascension that leaves the danger of the sea far below. Once inside the tower, the social dynamics of the space become critical. This brings us to the rule of 3. In the early days, some lighthouses were manned by only 2 keepers, but isolation can breed darkness in the mind, and if one man died, the other was left alone with the body and the duty, a psychological burden too great to bear. So the rule was changed. There must always be 3. Visualize the balance of this triangle. If 2 men argue, there is a third to mediate. If one falls ill, there are 2 to share the watch. The presence of the third person breaks the intensity of the dyad. It creates a small society, a community rather than a couple. Imagine the dinner table in the curved kitchen set for 3. The conversation flows more easily. The silence is less heavy. The rule of 3 is a structural engineering of the soul, a way of distributing the weight of the solitude so that no single pillar has to bear the crushing load of the silence alone. but even with 3 men, the desire to communicate with the faraway world was overwhelming. On the most remote islands, like St Kilda, the keepers invented the St Kilda mail boat. This was not a boat at all, but a message in a bottle, elevated to an art form. Visualize a small block of wood, hollowed out to hold a letter and a penny for postage. This little cavity is sealed with sheep's tallow or tar to make it watertight. To help it float and catch the wind, a sheep's bladder, inflated like a balloon, is tied to the wood. The keeper stands on the cliff edge, reading the currents and the wind, and hurls this desperate little package into the sea. It is a surrender to fate. The boat might drift for days or weeks. It might wash up on the shores of Scotland or Norway. The wonder is that they were often found. A fisherman walking a distant beach would spot the strange bladder, open the wood, find the letter and the penny and post it. It is a message sent via the slow, chaotic network of the ocean itself. It speaks of the profound human need to be heard, to send a piece of oneself out across the void, trusting that the currents of the world will eventually carry our words to a friendly shore. Inside the tower, there were liquids far heavier and more dangerous than the ocean water. We return to the mechanism of the lens and the maintenance of the mercury float. While the mercury allowed the lens to spin without friction, it was a toxic substance that required careful tending. Visualize the ritual of straining the mercury. Over time, dust and grit would settle on the surface of the liquid metal, creating drag. The keeper had to drain the mercury from the trough. Imagine the weight of it. A small cup of mercury feels as heavy as a cannonball. It is a substance that confuses the senses, looking like water, but moving like molten lead. The keeper pours this shivering silver fluid through a chamois leather cloth or a fine linen filter. The mercury beads up, refusing to soak into the fabric, slipping through the pores in tiny, pure silver droplets, leaving the dirt behind. It is a mesmerizing, dangerous alchemy. The room must be ventilated. The fumes are invisible ghosts. This task required a steady hand and a deep respect for the material. It was an act of purification, restoring the perfect, frictionless surface that allowed the light to turn. It reminds us that the things that facilitate our smoothest movements often require the most careful, cautious handling to keep them pure. Finally, we come to the inevitable moment that touched every lighthouse in the late 20th century, the automation. This is the story of the last key turn, the final departure. Visualize the day the technicians installed the electric sensors, the automatic lamp changers, and the remote monitoring systems. The sun valve and the computer took over the watch. The keeper packs their sea chest. The personal touches, the photos on the curved wall, the rug in the kitchen, the cat, are removed. The tower is stripped of its domestic soul. Imagine the sound of the heavy iron door closing for the last time. The clunk of the lock is final. The keeper walks down the path to the helicopter or the waiting boat, looking back at the tower. The light is still flashing, the lens is still turning, but the building is empty. It has become a robot. There is a profound melancholy in this transition, but also a peace. The lighthouse has graduated. It no longer needs a nurse. It stands on its own, a solitary, self-sufficient guardian. The human spirit has been transferred into the circuitry, leaving the stone shell to face the storms in a new, profound silence, watching over the ocean with an unblinking electric eye that never sleeps and never tires. In the quiet aftermath of that final door closing, where the human presence has faded into the circuitry of automation, let us look more closely at the heart of the machine that remains. We have spoken of the lens as a jewel, but in the language of the lighthouse, size is everything. This brings us to the hierarchy known as the orders of the lens. Visualize the grand scale of this classification, a system developed by the French to rank the power of the light. It is a royal court of glass. At the very top sits the first order lens. Picture a structure that stands nearly 12 feet tall, a shimmering cathedral of glass that requires a man to climb inside it just to clean it. These are the kings, reserved for the most dangerous capes and the furthest reaches of the ocean. They're commanding, massive and heavy, casting a beam that curves over the horizon for 20 miles. Now, let your mind drift down the scale, through the second and third orders, until you reach the sixth order. This is the smallest of the family. Visualize a lens no bigger than a birdcage, perhaps a foot tall. It is delicate, portable, and precise. These are the lights used for harbours and calm inlets, the gentle whispers compared to the shouting giants of the coast. To see an order is to understand the geography of danger. The larger the glass, the greater the peril it watches over. It is a beautiful, graded system of brilliance, ensuring that every hazard, from the mighty ocean cliff to the quiet river mouth, has a lens perfectly sized to its need. Long before these intricate glass orders were calculated by physicists, the work of the lighthouse was not scientific, but spiritual. Let us drift back 15 centuries to the monastic origins of the beacon. Before there were keepers in uniforms, there were monks in robes. Travel in your imagination to the Hookhead Peninsula in Ireland in the 5th century. Picture a rough limestone promontory beaten by the Celtic Sea. Here, a Welsh monk named Duban established a monastery. But he did not just build a church, he lit a fire. Visualize a cauldron of coal or wood burning on top of a bluff, tended by men who saw the flame not just as a navigational aid but as an act of prayer. The tending of the light was a holy duty, a literal interpretation of being a light in the darkness. The smoke would rise to mingle with their chants. For centuries, the safety of the coast was maintained by these solitary figures, their lives a rhythm of meditation and stoking the fire. It reminds us that the desire to guide others, to prevent suffering and shipwreck, often springs from a place of deep compassion and spiritual devotion, a sacred pact between the watcher and the wayfarer. From the humble fire of the monk, let us leap forward to one of the most famous structures on Earth, which, you may be surprised to learn, began its life as a lighthouse. We are speaking of the Statue of Liberty. When she was first gifted to America, she was placed under the care of the Lighthouse Board. Visualize the great copper goddess standing in New York Harbor, but see her not as a monument, but as a navigational aid. For 16 years, the torch she held was an active beacon. Imagine the keepers climbing the long winding stairs inside her copper body, ascending through the folds of her robe, up through the arm, to the lantern room located in the flame itself. The light was electric, one of the first of its kind, casting a beam from 300 feet in the air. However, the light was dim, struggling to escape the structure of the torch. It was described as a glowworm by frustrated sailors. Though she failed as a practical lighthouse, the image remains powerful, the symbol of liberty serving as a literal guide for ships entering the New World. It creates a beautiful union of meaning, the idea that freedom and safety are intertwined, and that the first thing a weary traveller sees is a woman holding up a light to show the way home. To keep a light burning, whether in a statue or a tower, requires fuel, and fuel is dangerous. This necessitated the construction of a small distinct building found at almost every light station, the oil house. Visualize walking away from the tall white tower, across the green turf, to a small squat building made of red brick or heavy stone. The door is thick metal. This is the bunker. In the days of kerosene and whale oil, the risk of fire was the keeper's greatest fear. If the fuel caught fire in the tower, the chimney effect would destroy everything. So the volatile liquid was banished to this small outbuilding. Step inside the oil house. It is cool, dark, and smells intensely of hydrocarbons and earth. Rows of brass or tin canisters sit on stone shelves. The floor is often covered in sand to catch spills. This little building represents the compartmentalization of risk. It teaches us a lesson in safety, that to protect the main light, we must keep the dangerous elements separated, respecting their power by giving them their own space, a safe distance from the heart of the home. But not every light on the coast was lit with the intention of saving lives. In the shadows of maritime history, there lies the dark legend of the false lights, often associated with groups known as moon cussers. drift to a stormy night on a rugged, lawless coast in the 18th century. The clouds are thick, obscuring the true lighthouse. Legends whisper of men who would tie a lantern to the neck of a hobbled horse and walk it slowly along the beach. To a ship captain at sea, the bobbing light looked like the stern lantern of another ship, safely at anchor in a harbour. Thinking they were following a friend into safe water, the ship would turn toward the beach and crash onto the jagged rocks. These wreckers would then plunder the cargo. They were called moon cussers because they cursed the moon for providing enough light to expose their treachery. While historians debate how often this actually happened, the story persists as the shadow self of the lighthouse. It is the anti-beacon. It reminds us that trust must be given carefully, that not every light in the darkness is a guide, and that we must learn to distinguish the steady, rhythmic pulse of the true tower from the erratic, wandering will-o'-the-wisp of the false shore. To avoid such deception, the prudent mariner relies on a book of absolute truth. This is the Light List, a publication as essential to the sailor as the compass. Visualize a thick, soft-cover book, its pages dense with data. It is not a novel, yet it tells the story of the entire coastline. Every lighthouse, every buoy, every day beacon is listed with its precise coordinates, its height, its colour, and its unique flash pattern. Opening this book is like opening a directory of stars. Imagine running your finger down the columns. Cape Elizabeth, flashing white 15s, 129 feet. It converts the romance of the flashing light into the certainty of mathematics. A sailor in the pitch black does not guess. They time the flash with a stopwatch, then consult the book. If the timing matches the book, they know where they are. It is the encyclopedia of safety. It represents the codification of the world, the translation of physical landmarks into data that can be carried in the pocket, ensuring that even in the darkest night, the identity of the light can be verified and trusted. Inside the lantern room, the technology that creates that trusted flash has evolved. When the light bulb replaced the oil wick, a new problem arose. Bulbs burn out, and a lighthouse cannot be dark for even a minute. The solution was the automatic lamp changer. Visualize a mechanical device that looks like a small carousel or a revolver, sitting precisely at the focal point of the lens. It holds 2 or 3 light bulbs. The primary bulb is burning bright, but inevitably the filament snaps, the light dies. Instantly, within a fraction of a second, a sensor detects the darkness. Click whir. The carousel rotates. The dead bulb is swung out of the way, and a fresh new bulb is swung into position. The circuit closes, and the light blazes back to life. The interruption is so fast that a ship at sea would likely never notice. This little robot is a master of redundancy. It sits there, holding the backups in its hand, ready to act the moment failure occurs. It is a lesson in preparedness, ensuring that when one light fails, another is immediately ready to take its place, with no hesitation and no loss of guidance. As automation took hold and the keepers left, the method of reaching these isolated towers changed. The boat gave way to the air. This brings us to the helicopter landing pad, a feature that altered the architecture of the rock. Visualize a lighthouse like the Wolf Rock or the Bishop, a needle of stone in the ocean. There is no flat ground. So, engineers built a platform directly on top of the lantern room. Picture a mesh steel circle, hovering like a halo above the glass dome. The arrival of the helicopter is a sensory overload. The sound of the rotors beating against the air, the downdraft whipping the sea into a white frenzy below. The pilot must hover with incredible precision, sometimes touching down only one wheel or lowering a technician by a winch. This metal grid represents the modern tether. It allows maintenance crews to drop from the sky, fix the solar panels or the lamp changer, and vanish again. It turned the lighthouse from an island that took days to reach by sea into a destination minutes away by air, bridging the gap between the wild ocean and the speed of the modern world. But what happens to the old lenses? The first-order giants that were replaced by modern LED beacons? they do not disappear. They find a second life in the Lighthouse Museum. Visualize entering a quiet, high-ceilinged hall. In the centre stands the lens, removed from its tower. For the first time, you can see it at eye level. When it was in the lantern, it was high above you, a blinding star. Now, it is a sculpture. You can walk up to it and touch the glass. You can see the concentric rings, the brass fittings, the bubbles trapped in the crystal from the day it was cast in Paris in 1890. It looks like a spaceship or a time machine. Without the blinding light source inside, the lens catches the ambient light of the room, fracturing it into soft rainbows. It is a retired veteran, resting after a century of service. Seeing it here allows for a different kind of appreciation, not for its function, but for its form. It is a monument to the artistry of optics, a heavy, beautiful object that spent its life saving lives, now standing still to be admired for the complex beauty of its own construction. Finally, as we stand before the silent lens, we move to the most enduring fact of all, the inner light, or the metaphorical power of the lighthouse in the human psyche. Why do we love them? Why do we drift to sleep listening to stories about them? It is because the lighthouse is the ultimate symbol of hope. It is the archetype of the watcher. Visualize the tower not as a building, but as a concept within yourself. It represents the part of you that remains stable when your emotions are crashing like waves. It is the observer who watches the storms of life without being swept away by them. It stands on the edge of the known world, facing the unknown dark, and says, "I am here." It asks nothing in return. It does not judge the ships it guides. It shines for the luxury liner and the fishing boat alike. To meditate on the lighthouse is to cultivate that quality within yourself, the capacity to stand tall, to keep your light clear, and to remain grounded in your own foundation, no matter how hard the wind blows or how dark the night becomes. It is the stone promise that the morning will come, and that until it does, the light will not fail. And so, we arrive at the final threshold, the ultimate truth that binds the stone tower to the infinite expanse of the universe. We have spoken of the light guiding ships on the water, but we must remember the physics of the light itself. This brings us to the concept of the eternal signal. Consider for a moment the nature of a photon, a single particle of light. When the keeper lit the wick of the oil lamp in 1850, or when the modern LED pulses tonight, the light does not simply hit the water and vanish. A portion of that beam misses the sea, it misses the clouds, it shoots upward, escaping the atmosphere of our blue planet. Because space is a vacuum, there is nothing to stop it. That light travels at 186,000 miles per second, moving outward forever. Visualize this cosmic reality. The beam from the pharaohs of Alexandria, lit 2,000 years ago, is still travelling. It is now 2,000 light years away, a faint ripple of information passing through a distant nebula. The flashes from the Eddystone, the sweep of the fast net, the blink of the little harbour lights, they're all still out there, an expanding sphere of human presence moving through the galaxy. We're surrounded by a bubble of our own history written in light. Imagine yourself floating in the deep silence of space, watching these beams depart from Earth. They look like the pulses of a heartbeat, expanding into the void. This means that nothing is ever truly lost. The vigilance of the keepers, the storms they weathered, the safety they provided, it has all been converted into radiant energy that will outlast the stone towers themselves. The lighthouse is not just a terrestrial marker, it is a celestial broadcaster. It tells the universe that here, on this small watery rock, we learned how to conquer the dark. We learned how to build stars of our own, and that light, once kindled, belongs to eternity. It travels on, carrying the memory of the shore into the endless ocean of the night. And now, the journey is complete. The ship of your mind has navigated the long, winding coast. You have drifted past the ancient fires of Egypt, through the storm-swept rocks of the Atlantic, under the green copper domes, and into the quiet amber glow of the lantern room. The sea is calm now. The wind has dropped to a whisper, barely enough to stir the surface of the water. Feel the heavy, comforting anchor of sleep dropping down through the depths, down through the blue water, down through the dark water, settling softly into the soft white sand of the seabed. You are moored. You are safe. The motion of the waves has stopped, replaced by the slow, rhythmic rising and falling of your own breath. In and out, in and out. The lights are dimming along the shore. The keepers are drawing the linen curtains, closing the heavy iron doors, turning the brass keys in the locks. The world is shutting down. There is nothing left to watch, nothing left to guard. The duty is done. Let the stone walls of your relaxation protect you. Let the fog of sleep roll in, thick and soft, wrapping you in a blanket of silence. You're drifting away from the land, away from the structure, floating into the pure, weightless dark. It is a darkness without fear, a darkness that rests the eyes and heals the spirit. Everything is still. The horizon has dissolved. There is only you and the peaceful velvet night. Let go of the last rope. Let go. And now, 101 wonders are resting with you. Sleep now. Good night.